Hopefully it works this time. I feel like I'm getting lag or something. Okay, we'll be back. Okay, so get this. I'm in my bedroom right now, and I like having my computer in here because it's better for like OnlyFans stuff to have it set up in here because I can do like pictures off of my computer. I've got all of these options, right? But the last time I had my computer set up in my bedroom, it tripped the circuit breakers like a lot of times because it was drawing so much power. And also because, like, most of my apartment, its electricity is wired to the bedroom circuit. And it's like a terrible design because, like, the bathroom is on the same circuit with like half of the kitchen as well. So if I have like anything running, it'll all like it'll all fuck with each other. It's not good. So I turned off my bathroom light just in case. But oh, yeah. So yeah, not good. What the? Yo, it's Ryan Gunther, the third greatest chatter after Crimson 90 and the Devil Dances. My problem with abortion is how women naturally go for broke losers due to no natural consequences. It's dysgenic while Republicans call it eugenic. This is like not borne out. I don't know if you're memeing, but like women tend to go for men who have like quite high socioeconomic status. Like it's very rare for a woman to date a man with less economic status than her. Women prefer to date like higher status men. And so like I mean this is like the incel meme sort of, where it's like the hypergamy. Yeah, I'm a broke loser, where's my state mandated woman? You and like I mean I know you're just but like this is like what like men wish was the case. Because women like there's like a very few selection of men who are like very attractive and very competent, and they end up having sex with like the vast majority of women who are sexually active. And so like less men are having sex now than they were in the 50s. There's less sexual activity now with like Tinder and stuff. But there's like a few people who are having a lot more sexual activity, a few men who are having a lot more, which is really interesting. Oh, I got to streaming so late today. And I've got like 33 minutes before. Oh, also I got an editor. So shout out to him. a ramble talker, the greatest man on earth. Oh, I kind of want to. There's like a few videos that I wanted to react to on stream. There's one, it's a Vosh video. And I think that Vosh really misunderstands social constructionism. So, like, Vosh will say things that, like, oh, like water is socially constructed, and whether or not H2O is water is socially constructed. And what Vosh really means is that, like, the symbology of H2O is constructed, the actual pronunciation of that, the fact that we use the word hydrogen to denote a specific chemical element, the fact that we use the word two to denote a specific, number or quantity of something. That's like the construction of the language is socially constructed, but it's pointing to something that exists in reality, right? So it's like a signifier for, what actually exists. And so I think that, like, Vosh will often use this term like, oh, it's socially constructed, it's socially constructed. And no, it's not socially constructed. Water is not socially constructed. Like, gender as a neurochemical phenomenon in the brain is not socially constructed. That's a real thing that is going on chemically and electronically in the brain. And whether or not we call this like gender or not is what is a social construct. So I think that, like, this is just a huge barrier because it looks, when Vosh makes these arguments to people, I think he looks insane to the average person when he says that, like, water is a social construct, or men and women are like male and female are social constructs, etc. I think that he looks really crazy. And because he's saying that, like, the words and the categories and the exact boundaries, he's saying those are social constructs. But the way people read it is like actual water is a social construct, or like penises and vaginas are social constructs, which is not the case. And so I think that Vosh, like, gets this so wrong, and the implications of accepting that, like, there are real facts about the world is, like, very relevant to the discussion, but, like, it just can't progress as long as people like Vosh insist on just saying that everything is arbitrary. But I definitely want to do I want to, like, write something out, because there's, like, I was looking at a few clips of Vosh talking about this, and I watched he, like, responded or he reacted to, like, a specific video on gender, and there were, like, a few moments in that where I was like, I was so frustrated because he was just, like, so wrong. So I think it'd be good to, like, write something out and then go over what I write out on stream. I think that would be cool. Oh, also, I read The Coddling of the American Mind by Jonathan Haidt. I think I really need to read The Righteous Mind too. I really like that book. It's one thing that I've, like, talked with people before about. Like, I've talked with Not So Erudite about this, and I've talked with Destiny about this, about how we've talked about, like, trigger warnings. And so the information, the data that we have on trigger warnings right now indicates that they actually make people, like, more sensitive and more likely to be harmed by the content. So what it does is basically it primes your brain to expect harm and to see harm from the content as a legitimate, serious worry, right? And so when you actually read the content, your brain is already ready to be damaged by it. And it turns out that this has a negative effect on your well-being. And so I think a lot of, like, progressive discourse is basically, it's the same mechanism where it's priming you to be harmed by things, where, like, trans activists will say, if trans people don't get hormones, they will commit suicide, right? There will be mass death, genocide of trans people. That's what they say. They say these things. But if you dig into the literature, there's no hard evidence for lack of HRT being linked with suicides. There's no hard evidence for that. The only evidence that we have for this is asking trans people if they think they would commit more suicide if they were deprived of HRT. Turns out that if you ask anorexics if they're going to commit suicide if they're not allowed to lose weight, they also say yes. So it's not enough to simply ask a group. If you ask like the urine enthusiasts, the people who drink urine, whether or not urine's great for them and it's improved their life, and without it they would be doing so much worse, they will tell you that urine has saved their lives. Essential oils people will say the same thing. People who use crystals will say the same thing. So you can't just ask people whether or not a specific treatment is going to improve your suicide outcomes or your health outcomes. There are 2 studies on trans morbidity that actually tracked like real deaths, and neither found a correlation or a link between suicide and HRT for or against. In fact, in one of the cases, it found that in the group that was on HRT, 1 more person died of external causes, which included suicide, which doesn't mean anything, of course, because it was the number of people who died from external causes was like 13 and 12. So obviously that doesn't mean anything, but like we don't have any hard evidence for this. But when we have like trans activists who tell people that like you need HRT to survive, what you do is you prime the person, you prime trans people to view themselves as essentially fragile. Like they're not going to be able to survive or make it or succeed unless they have, society and government and the medical establishment really catering to them, which, as far as we know, isn't literally true. And I don't think that messaging is good. I think it's really dangerous. I've tried watching Vosh. I can't stand him. He just oozes too much nonsense. I can never tell exactly where he stands, which is fine. I have a difficult time understanding where he stands as well. Just because I don't watch a lot of Vosh, frankly. But, so like in conversations with him, sometimes I will say something, and then he will disagree, and then we'll dig into it. And it turns out that we don't actually disagree, but we're just using like different definitions for words. That's a little bit frustrating, but that's like par for the course with political discussions as well. He stands where he makes the most money. I don't know. I don't think that you can get like as popular as Vosh is or Destiny is or these like big political figures without believing what you're saying to some extent. Just because it takes so much mental effort. I read another book called The Elephant in the Brain, which is all about self-deception. And so one of the observations in the book is that like lying takes actually a lot of brain power. It takes a lot of mental energy to consistently keep up a lie over time. And so the human brain is really good at lying to itself. And so when you, like confirmation bias is a good example of this. I'm sure that when Vosh or I or anyone else, this isn't targeted at anyone, but Vosh, for example, when he goes and he looks for evidence for his beliefs, he's going to find evidence that agrees with him. And you can try to moderate that impulse within you, but it's going to lean towards finding things that you already believe. And so the brain is really good at convincing itself of what it wants to believe. It's really good at lying to itself. So I think the chance that Vosh is like actively like grifting or lying is really low. Much more likely is that like, and I don't even think this is necessarily true, but like a more likely option would be to say that Vosh's brain lies to him and convinces him he's correct, even if he knows he's not. And I don't even think that's true necessarily. I think that Vosh probably has like, he's read a lot of things. He's had a lot of life experiences that have just convinced him of a certain worldview, and he genuinely believes that. That's my impression of Vosh. And frankly, I like talking to Vosh. I think he's enjoyable to talk to. I would love to talk to Vosh more. With all due respect, water, please sip some water. With all due respect to half dash. I think what I'm gonna try to do is stream more. Yeah, Height discusses that a lot in The Righteous Mind, the elephant, and the writer problem. The writer thinks he's guiding the elephant, but in reality, the writer just convinces himself that they are. Yeah, I haven't read The Righteous Mind, so I've just read The Elephant in the Mind, but very similar metaphor, like a lot of the same conclusions. 4chan is correct. You can see it in like the pictures that I've posted on Twitter. Do I like them? I guess my boobs. I do like my boobs a lot more. I think they're really nice. I've like talked my friends' ears off about them and probably bothered people by just like posting so many pictures and being like, check this out, isn't this sick? This is great. I will say though, I've gotten pretty bad stretch marks lately, which is like a recent development. It's happened in like the past few days, which is really annoying. And I'm gonna have to just like wait for them to like slowly disappear over time. They feel very natural, I think. Um, how they feel depends a lot on how you heal. So like I think that I've gotten very lucky with how they've healed. Because like if they don't heal right, they'll get like firm. Um, but I think I just got lucky and they're pretty soft. Whoa, you fapped me every day? That's based. Banana is savage. We're beast moding right now. Half nuts. I think my boobs are still healing. Like I said, they've got like in like the past week they've developed like nasty stretch marks. I shouldn't say nasty, that's like too down on them. They've developed intense stretch marks, and I've got to wait for those to heal. But yeah, streaming, memeing. Oh, I think I did monetize my YouTube channel now. I did that recently. I could have done that beforehand, but that's good. It's a good step. What's my favorite movie? Ooh, I know what my favorite movie is. Mm, Moulin Rouge. My favorite song, though, is Marvin Gaye, What's Going On. That is a that's a god tier song. It's so good. Like when those first lines hit, the mother, mother. It's like I've got these like nice headphones that I use specifically to listen to like rhythm and blues from like the 70s. which I listen to like a lot of, and they're like really nice. But I don't wear them to stream because I think they look sort of awkward. This is like, I don't know. It's like so nerdy, but like I will lay in bed and I'll put on my headphones and I'll listen to songs. And sometimes the songs are just like purely instrumental. And I'll just like pick out like every instrument and I can like hear like where I can like visualize that I'm like listening to it live and like the saxophone is over there and there's like a bass guitar over there. And I just like listening to the song, like picking out every instrument. That's what I like to do. Thank you, Triptychon. I am well, and you should lurk. You're obligated to lurk morally. So yeah. I don't know if I want kids. I guess I would say that I would want kids, but I'm okay with not being able to have kids. I think that I probably won't be able to have kids, but I think it would be nice to. I'm very much like a pro-natalist. I don't think you're like I don't think it's like the only important value, but I think it's like pretty important to have children if you are capable. Whoa, an alert for severe thunderstorms with 90 miles per hour wind for the next half hour. Scary. Keep inside the music. That's interesting. Millions of people shouldn't have children. But like, that might be true. But the world is like a big place, so like of course. You like Russia. I don't know. I don't know anything about Russia. Some great literature coming out of there. Or that came out of there. Tolstoy, Dostoevsky. Lots of legendary authors. They really captured like a certain grimness and brutality. Um, but also in that like a certain level of humanity and beauty. Yeah, depression. But I know so little about Russian culture. I'm a federalist person. I think it's a good thing if communities are allowed to write laws about what is like appropriate or inappropriate behavior within them, within a certain like band of reason. And I think that like prohibiting abortion is within that band of reason. I think it's okay if there are local communities that prohibit by law abortion, like morally speaking. And then legally speaking, I don't think there's a strong constitutional argument for saying that um, abortion should be permitted federally. If you had to choose which communist regime would you have lived under from 1900 to 1988, I have no idea. They're all pretty bad, right? Like China had their Cultural Revolution. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know enough about how life would differ between them. Maybe Russia, maybe the Soviet Union. Um, Do I agree with abortion in cases of incest and rape? Oh, I should also say this. I think that if I were to vote or have a decision, like if I were to manage my own like state, right? If you make me like president of Texas tomorrow, I would not ban abortion. So I think abortion access is good for the states that have abortion access. Um, I think a big reason for this is crime. So there's a lot of sociological literature to indicate that crime is really linked to control over sexual reproduction. So when you can manage and choose when you have children, you can make sure that you are giving birth to children in an environment where they're going to have a supportive family structure, where they're going to have a stable home life, where they're going to be able to go to school, get a good education, where they're going to have, they're not going to grow up in poverty. And when you have all of those cases, the chance that someone becomes a criminal later in life goes way down. And so personally, I think that there's a lot of good sociological reasons to not ban abortion. I think that if we look at states that ban abortion in 20 years, I think they're really going to be suffering because of that effect and other effects. But at the same time, so I acknowledge that, but I also think like if there's a community in America that wants to make sacrifices economically and socially because they have a certain moral conviction, I think they should be allowed to do that. You reckon this is going to end up with minority business owners having their shops burnt down by Antifa? Um, Abortion bans? I don't know. Probably not. That's like too specific of a prediction. But more crime in general. Wow. Folks saying that this might lead to riots. Oh, it's probably gonna lead to riots, yeah. I mean, part of the problem is that like women don't really riot in the same way that men do. So if women are primarily the people bothered by this, I think they will primarily pursue other avenues besides rioting. I don't know English. What do you speak? What language? Kinda cringe that you have to want kids to have sex. Wife and I are opposed due to severe health issues on both sides. I shouldn't have to get a vasectomy or her a hysterectomy just to fuck. I mean, you can wear a condom or use the pill. Elder Ring, final boss, talk to a girl. Not 100% effective, but largely effective. I think it's pretty, I think it's pretty reliable. Condoms do work. Condoms absolutely work. I think different people need to weigh the different pros and cons, but there's lots of good other options if you really don't want a child. How would a vasectomy not be 100% effective? I mean, I guess if it wasn't performed correctly. put in on Twitch. They fail a lot, actually. Interesting. I did not know that. People really showing how important it is to be able to have sex without consequences. And this is kind of another thing where, like, it's not the end of the world if sex has consequences. Like, if there is a community that, like, bans contraception, which would require another overruling by the Supreme Court, like, say that happens, which is, I think, unlikely, but say that happens, and it bans abortion. And so the only option to not have children is abortion. I think, I mean, it's going to have bad sociological effects, but, like, I think that it's not going to be, like, the end of the world. Home abortions are just going to increase. Are we going to pretend there won't be an increase in abused kids? Love, I really do you, but you could not be underselling this mare. Underselling this mate. Man, I don't know what is going on. Oh, underselling this more. Because I'm like, oh, a community could ban abortion and contraception, and it'd be really bad. And these are all the reasons why it would be really bad, and all these bad social effects. But I think you should still be able to do it. Yeah, I think it's a really convincing argument for sure. I mean, I think the thing is that, like, fundamentally, I think that because America is like a confederation of states and local communities that allow, like, easy free travel between them, I think that gives a lot of leeway for states to take on different, like, a wide variety of different policies and procedures to governance, because the harm is always going to be mitigated by people's ability to simply choose not to live in a specific area. So that's one thing. The other thing is that I think that if there's a community that ends up choosing, they make their voice heard electorally, and they vote in politicians, local politicians, state politicians that are willing to ban access to contraception and abortion, what that probably indicates is the community as a whole has a very strong, deeply held value. So they're not liberals. They're not, coastal elites who are going to be doing these policies, who are going to be demanding them. It's going to be, I also, hold on. Hippy Dippy is starting now. So I'm going to try to get into that.
This was my Biden paid for free crack pipe. Please don't get me in trouble.
There is Taftage. Perfect. Hello.
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 I couldn't hear you, Taft.
Oh, I'm probably. You can
there
probably
you go.
hear me now. Yeah. It's on push to talk. Sorry.
All right, we're a few minutes behind, so I'm going to jump out, let Dylan know we're ready. My kid will not show up, so I do apologize again. Have a great night, everyone. I will be watching with bated breath on the edge of my seat. Have fun and send me a message if you need anything, right?
Danabo, before you leave, I just want to say I'll be praying for you and your mom. I hope everything goes good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to visit in a few weeks and just have a good time. I'm not going to dwell on it. We're just going to have a good time together for a few weeks and see what goes from there. But yeah, have a good night, everyone. Take care.
Appreciate it,
Good night.
Is everybody researching? Is that why it's cold? Come on, Stein. I know.
Yeah,
You're Googling
I'm punching
right there.
away. Yeah.
There you go.
I'm walking my dogs. Oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? I'm excited. I'm excited to talk to Dylan, the war hero. So I'm really excited to talk to him.
Oh wow. Oh wow.
Yeah. He's got us on mute. I can't believe it.
We're blessed. I was just saying I hate Discord because it's someone that has to, have a flag behind me. The damn Discord camera always flips it, and I don't know how to fix it. So I look like when I was growing up, I used to listen to this punk band, Anti-Flag. I look like I'm like representing them, but no, that's a real flag. Yeah.
You can fix that if you use OBS as a virtual camera. Then you can do whatever you want.
You can fix it. It appears right to me though, like on Discord.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that's all.
Yeah, it looks right to us. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll flip it for you, but for us, it looks normal.
Well, good. I don't want anyone thinking I'm a commie or anything. So
yeah.
I remember I used to have a flag behind me, and sometimes I'd like take mirror selfies, and people would like message me, and they'd be like, "Your flag's backward," and I'm like, "It's a mirror." It was just like so annoying.
I don't like stereotypes, but I feel like you could.
It is. It's tree sap. I had tree. I was cutting limbs, and I got tree sap, and my son's sleeping downstairs. And my wife said if I come back down and get a new hat, she'll kill me because he'll wake up. So I went. I tried to wipe it off with. And listen, here's why I'm wearing the hat because this happened. So
fair enough.
I'm a bald man now,
Fair
so
enough.
I'm trying to hide my shame. So it's wet hat over bald.
I was just like this. We're sweating already. God damn.
Yeah, it's hot here.
I'm sweating. It's hot.
Rob,
It's
nice
like 100.
Looks good, man.
Yo, what's up, Q Cuddy? Oh my god, erudite chats.
So, had to make another
erudite emojis.
Yeah.
Is anyone else nervous?
So based.
I'm not.
Intensely.
As a matter of fact, I wanted to say, Taft, it's been a while. You still haven't made your way over to Infinity Acrewood for us to talk, so I'm going to be honest with you, I'm a little disappointed, right? But I'm hoping you're going to solve that at some point, right? Jangles, always a pleasure to see you, buddy. Joe Lewis, you know I love picking on you because you're Joe Lewis. So good to see you, buddy. You're not smiling. You're not going to smile tonight? All right, fuck you, Joe. Fuck you, Joe. We're not smiling. Fuck you. We're not smiling no more. All right, Rhizome. What's up, buddy?
Yeah.
And Alex, of course. Alex,
Yeah.
how are you doing, buddy?
DTV, let's go, baby. Let's go.
Ready.
We're going to shut them
On
down.
the grind.
Yeah, they're going to be pissed after this stream. There's going to be people emotional. They're going to have to get their emotional support animal or their emotional support cat, whatever it is.
I mean,
They're going to be
you already
singing the
got the dog right
blues.
there.
I was just saying, I got that. My emotional support animals next to me 24/7. I'm an emotional wreck.
Right? And James, now that he's back up on his camera, James, I always love seeing you, brother. How you doing tonight?
I'm present.
I like my glasses.
Good enough.
Out fucking standing. And of course, the man, the myth, the...
My glasses actually don't fit me very well, though. It's not good. Wait, hold up. Test. How is the... Test. Okay. How about test? Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to... Oh my god. Is my mic like crazy peaking? Hello, how about that? Yeah, because I'm fucking with the mic. Okay, how about this? Test. Dog stop. Dogs. Okay. Bro, these people are being so fucking loud. Holy shit. I need to turn Conspiracy Castle down like 90%. Because you're not allowed to let a good tragedy go to waste. You have to exploit it. There's probably a bunch. Are there like Polish flags? This is a terrible point by Conspiracy Castle. There's probably a lot of American flags.
Corner with Rhizome. Could you introduce yourself?
Oh yeah, I'm Rhizome, RHYZHOM on Twitch. Yeah, I'm just here to, I don't know, debate. What's up?
Next, I'm going to throw it over to James.
Mellow greetings, everybody. My name is James. I am from the internet. I discuss news, politics, and economics from the left over at twitch.tv/James from the internet. And tonight's password, tonight's secret word, the secret password for tonight is contempt. Stick around. I'm sure you're going to get to witness quite a bit of it.
I'm going to throw it over to Alex Stein, Primetime 99.
That's a good introduction. I'm on the grind all the time. Friday night is about to get freaky deaky. You know me on the Conspiracy Castle. I'm also a regular guest on the Tucker Carlson Show, or as you like to call it, the White Power Hour. We're ready to get down and dirty tonight, so let's do the dang thing, as they say.
I'm going to throw it over to Rob Noor.
Most people know me here. I just want to make a couple quick announcements. I lost my Discord channel, my YouTube channel, primarily because even though I use pronouns that people want and I have civil discussions with people in the trans community, apparently people in my community weren't. So I lost those channels and people think that I would be upset, but I've turned a new leaf. I am now the most trans positive person you know, that understands that every trans person is better than every cis person that's ever lived. I'm more than happy to debate these issues tonight. Please, trans community, don't cancel me on Twitch. I love you all so much. I'll be here for you. I promise. Thanks.
Finally got Rob. Thank goodness. He's speaking some facts for once. Gonna throw it over to Jangles.
Hi everyone, my name is Justin. I go by Django Science Light on the internet. So I have a YouTube channel, a tiny one where I do video essays, debates, and I have a second channel where I try to ruin the very concept of comedy so no one ever laughs again, because laughter is a sin.
CTV.
Hello, everybody. I am critically thinking veteran, a Christian American constitutional conservative. I served 9 years on Ohio-class submarines as a machinist made auxiliaryman. I have slept next to nuclear weapons, a nuclear reactor, and I fucked a mermaid. I've been to 45 of the 50 states. I've been to England, Scotland, and Wales, met thousands, tens of thousands of people on my journey, and I've had lots of deep
I want it to be a
diving
regular
and
show, Foliage.
thought-provoking conversations.
I'm definitely
with
going to
people
stream
from
tomorrow.
all types of various backgrounds. I love being a part of conversations and trying to understand the truth underneath all of the rhetoric that some people in politics like to just only have as a part of their stew. So I'm looking forward to having a great conversation tonight, especially considering that I'm the reigning Hippy Dippy champion. Wait a minute. I could take that meme serious if I actually had a fucking belt. You know, if we get this fucking guy over here out of Ukraine and back over to the States and start actually doing the work of the business like he's supposed to, right, would have a belt. But until then, right, we're all just kind of sitting there fucking waiting. So anyway, good show tonight. We're going to have a great time. Looking forward to it.
Sorry, I gave your belt to Zelensky. I'm going to throw it over to Joe Lewis.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. If you like what you hear, as far as I say on my end, you can follow my Twitch channel at twitch.tv/Joe Lewis with 2 zeros or 2 O's, excuse me. And the Twitter is the same. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Dylan and Annabelle. Hope everything's going well.
Wonderful. And finally, we're going to throw it over to Taft Taj.
Thanks, Dylan. Yeah, Taftaj, I post sexy pictures on the internet. I have a very complicated name, so you can call me April if that's easier, or just Taff if that's easier. Usually moderate center right, so looking forward to getting into conversation today.
Fantastic. Okay, so now we're going to go into the rules. First rule, of course, is that...
I got a question.
Okay, what's the question? Quick.
Are we planning the CTV Zelensky SummerSlam? Who's paying for me to get to Ukraine? I'm ready.
Okay, I'll bring you over. Okay, you can face Zelensky, and you can face him. Of course, you'll have to face him with the Ukrainian like SBU everywhere, though. Of course, so you know you'll be
Ben Stiller.
drugged. You'll be drugged. They'll like cut your Achilles heel before the fight, and Zelensky will inevitably win. But I can set that up. Okay, now into the rules. First rule: you buy Twitch TOS. We all want to keep our shows and our jobs, so I would appreciate if you guys did not do anything that would break Twitch TOS or get me banned. Next rule: if I'm talking, nobody else is talking. I'm not talking to give my opinion, even though I know everybody desperately wants it. I'm talking specifically just to moderate. Next rule is that during intros and outros, you do not interrupt people. That's supposed to be an uninterrupted period. Try to keep those short, like 30 seconds to like 45 seconds maximum.
Ukraine isn't even the current thing at the
if you
moment.
find it hard to talk or like get into a conversation, raise your hand. I'll write your name down. Use that as a last
new
resort.
thing is
Please use it as a
abortion,
last resort, not a
guys.
first resort, because it takes a while to get the conversation naturally over to you after you've raised your hand. And you will use people's proper pronouns here. I don't care what you do in your own show and your own business, but this is my platform, and I've made that one of the rules. And do not attack anybody's immutable characteristics. That means if somebody's like go after somebody's race, going after
So
somebody's
true.
gender,
I'm against current things.
stuff like that. I don't care if you insult people. Just call them a pig fucker, not a racial slur. Okay? We understand?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is this ASMR?
That'd have been a great opportunity for somebody to call me a pig fucker, but nobody took advantage of it. Okay. Besides
Not
that,
'cause
that's all
he's
the rules. Are
talking
there
in the
any questions? No?
No,
Fant-
no ass hat. There's no questions.
Thank you, CTV.
Okay.
That's all of the introductory period. Oh, and one
Oh, I
last
should
thing.
just the chat.
Do not
Bloggers.
bill us for any brain hemorrhages, brain damage, or internal bleeding you might get in from your brain from tonight's conversation. The opinions expressed here are not the opinions of Dylan Burns Incorporated or of the Ukrainian state. And lastly, please do not get all of your opinions from Twitch streamers on the internet. Do your own research. Go read other opinion pieces and other journals and reports and articles yourself on these issues. Do not trust anybody on here to give you your opinions. Unless somebody says otherwise, they're usually not an expert on the issue at hand, even if they have opinions on it. Okay. Now that all that's out of the way, the first topic we're going to jump into is the Texas GOP's new platform. Recently, the Texas Republican Party released a new platform that's getting a lot of buzz due to the fact that it has things on it like marriages between a man and a woman. It has some parts in it that has to do with like, having it so adult children, quote unquote, their medical records being available to their parents, and a lot of other stuff that people are quite upset over and other people are defending. And so my question to everybody here is, since we talk usually on a national level, what do you think of the Texas GOP platform? Or if you want to, any other state platforms you'd like to talk about. But this is the one we're talking about now because it's the one that's getting all the attention. So we're going to throw it over first to, you know what? I'm going to throw it to Rob Noor to start us off.
Thank you. How long do we have? A minute to? Is it?
Try to keep it at 30 to 45 seconds. We want to
Oh,
get
okay.
to the
Okay.
intros.
Sure, no problem. I'll get through it as quick as possible. I'm glad that we're talking about this issue as opposed to left-wingers inciting an assassination attempt against a Supreme Court justice. I'm glad that almost every left Twitch streamer and elsewhere didn't talk about that. I'm glad it hasn't been talked about in the Hippy Dippy podcast. The only issue that matters is trans issues. I'd like to take a moment of silence for Pride Month. I haven't heard anyone talk about Pride Month anywhere. So if it would be nice to have some representation on Twitch of Pride Month.
It's not going to be a real conversation.
Okay, and now that we have that, I'm going to default to, I don't know what my positions are. All trans people, such as the noble Alex Stein, who identifies as trans, he obviously knows more than me. All trans people know more than the rest of us. So I think all cis people should take a backstage to this conversation and just leave the trans people talk.
Okay.
Wow, inspirational. Okay, yeah, I think that the Texas GOP platform is a lot of meaningless culture war bullshit. It's not important. It's not a tactical victory that is going to allow for more victories in the future. It's another way for Republicans to cash in on the current events of the day, to keep their jobs for a little bit longer, and it's not going to advance any meaningful long-term socio-political goal. What's going to happen is that the institutions and the culture in the country are going to continue moving left, and so really, I think that Texas GOP goals are not good policy. I mean, you can criticize them because they're just like, they're terrible policy. Like, we shouldn't be deciding what is medically viable based on opinion poll. That's a terrible idea. But also, I don't think they're good strategy from a right-wing perspective. I think if you're a right-winger, this is probably not what you want to be doing. Even if it's politically expedient right now, it lets you keep your job a little bit longer.
Rise up.
Yeah, basically, people who hold different systems or values exist in the state of Texas. People's beliefs don't determine what the best outcomes are, just as Taft is saying. So I'm really curious to hear what justifies someone's Christian beliefs and biblical values being imposed on people as a matter of law over their own.
I
Do you want to get in
things
more
moving a little bit right now. I'm just going to throw it over to
videos?
Joe Lewis.
Yeah, maybe we can spend some time
Maybe I'll
on
open
the
up a
religious
notepad
aspect of this.
so I can organize my thoughts a little bit better.
Document. Generally speaking, Texans are in a monolith, so everybody's gonna have different perspectives. So I'm very curious to hear how mainly Republicans and right wingers feel about this bill, because they're not bill. Excuse me, this party platform, because this is their thing. So this is the thing that they'd be advocating for as Texans.
Jangles.
Yeah, so I don't want to go full on edgy atheist right out the gate because I forgot my fedora and you have to do that. But there's a section of this, like God plays a central role in like the tenets and the driving motivation behind basically everything in this bill. They say the function of the government is not to grant rights, but to protect the inalienable God-given rights of life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness of all, including the unborn. So this is scary. All right, even if you're religious, like who decides what God actually means? Who decides what is the will of the creator? The state does in this case. All right, that's why it's coming from the state and not from God himself. So we're going to create like a tiered system that doesn't have to be proven. You don't need evidence because God said so. And we see that all throughout the document. We see that motivation. We see why is marriage between a man and a woman? Because God said so. I don't have to prove that. That's all the proof I need. Why is patriotism important and should be indoctrinated into our children? Because because that's what God wants. Why are trans people bad and why is life-saving surgeries mutilation? Because God said so. God made man and a woman. They don't have to justify these things. And not only that, we've created a tiered system where Christians get to discriminate against other people with different beliefs. However, Christians can never be discriminated against. It's a tiered system. Has no place in a free country.
Next is going to be CTV.
As I'm kind of looking over all this stuff for the Texas GOP, that was linked in
CTV
the
will be good
Discord
to
by
argue
Joe.
against
Right?
because he's
So, Joe,
more
thanks
libertarian.
for linking that.
And I think I
and
can
the,
appeal to him on
screenshots. I
that
thought
basis.
that was pretty good of you. As I read through this, it's going to be hard for Texas to get this thing to pass and actually be law, regardless of how people feel about it. I feel like a better direction would have been to try to remove the language of marriage from government at all, right? And redefine what it is that the government sanctions as a civil partnership. That'd get you a lot closer to the actual goal than, coming out and just blatantly saying, we oppose all efforts to validate transgender identity, right? Like when you do that, you're saying that adults, right, that are, whether there's, you might believe that they're suffering from a mental illness, or they could actually be, going through an entirely different process in life, right? The trans individuals that I talk to, they understand exactly where I'm coming from when I have the conversation based in sex and not gender, and I don't get into the spectrums of things, right? Because, like, from what I understand, there it could pretty much be innumerable. So I feel like the reason why this is probably happening in Texas is because Texas has been majority conservative for a long ass time, and California has gotten so fucking bad that you got a lot of people that are moving from California and other parts of the nation to Texas, and now Texas has become kind of a melting pot of all the different peoples that are now, congregating in Texas, and you're going to end up having more conversations along these kinds of lines, especially since the conservative, say, like stronghold is already there in Texas because that was the majority population for the most recent period of time. So these things are going to keep popping up.
And Alex Stein.
Well, I was there. I'm actually a Texas state delegate, so I was actually a voting member, but I didn't necessarily vote on this stuff. But this shouldn't be surprising to people because this is just a party's outline of what they want to see in their party. This isn't, a representation of the state, because obviously there's Democrats in this state. And so this really shouldn't be a surprise when you look at the amount of people that are, celebrating trans, and we celebrate, all of the ideologies that are the exact opposite of this. People in Texas are a little, cognizant of what's happening. You have people like Bill Maher saying the amount of kids that are on gender hormone therapy or have been, gender reassigned in Los Angeles compared to Ohio is like 10,000% more. So the pendulum is swinging in places that are conservative, and just because they have these viewpoints or they have these stated goals doesn't necessarily mean that any of that's ever going to even come into law. So it's just something they're striving for. And you have to remember, at the Texas GOP convention, these are the biggest conservative activists that are part of the party. They're the most involved. So of course, it's going to be the most extreme. And you have people that everybody knows Joe Biden got 81 million votes, fair and square. But a lot of those people, and he's the best president of all time, and the gas prices going up is totally Putin's fault. And everybody there will 100% agree on, that's why inflation and the price of single family homes have gone up. We know that's all a good thing. That's all good for Americans. But you're going to have people in Texas that they're crazy. They're a bunch of crazy Texans. And this is another thing, is people are going to say Texas is ultra conservative. We've had governors, Ann Richards. We've had a lot of actually, it's been a liberal state in the past. So it's not as conservative as people think, but the pendulum is always going to swing. When we change the whole narrative that we currently follow because of social justice, people are going to get upset. People are going to get sick of it. They don't want their, they don't want their kids transition. So I think that's a big indication of how they feel. But like I said, this isn't the whole party's issue.
Okay, we're going to open it up to general conversation. Do your best not to get too out of control.
Dylan,
we want one person talking at a time. Yeah,
James
yeah,
didn't-
Reza.
James didn't go.
Oh, you're right. I'm very sorry, James from the internet. I ignored you. You can go.
I appreciate that, Dylan Burns. I'm sitting here and with rapt attention and breathless anticipation to hear what the theocratic fascists of America are going to do after they come out with their big 12-point plan to convert everybody to Christianity at the point of a sword. I'm super excited to see who the conservatives in the Republican GOP named to be the first Shah of Texas in their theocratic fascist state. And of course, I am all about Texas announcing that they are going to secede from the nation, because frankly, this entire hemisphere would be a lot better off if we made Texas Mexico again.
Okay, now the dialogue is open. Who wants to start us off?
I think one of the trans people should start us off. It's only fair on Pride Month here.
Okay, sure. I'll
Alex,
go.
you've identified as trans, correct, Alex?
All right, so
I think you speak.
Really quick, you said that'll get you closer to the goal if you weren't so outright with it. Do you think that they should be moving in this direction, though, that legislating towards their Christian beliefs is okay?
Are you asking me?
Yeah. Because you said like them being more palatable will get them closer to their goal, which is like
Well,
the
I think-
abolition of gay marriage, which is like making sure that like you can convert
Well, I mean,
trans people and
yeah,
shit.
yeah, yeah. When it comes to government, people, society, a lot of people just have a knee-jerk reaction to, we want fucking marriage to only mean between a man and a woman because it's spelled out in the Bible, and they attack it so directly, right? And then try to codify that without even bothering to think about how it actually impacts people that are not a part of their religion and their personal belief system, which is where, like, I definitely understand why it is that, you know, they feel the way that they do. And I feel the same exact way, right? Marriage is between a man and a woman, right? X, Y, and Z along the line. But when it comes to how you get that into government is, one, you just need to not use the word, right? Because the word itself, marriage, is what brings together what the idea of it is in the Christian faith. So from there, you understand that the government is only worried about the legal division of assets. So you just make the fucking word be the thing that the government's actually worried about, because they don't actually care who actually, you know, broke down the marriage, who was over here running around, you know, this, that, and the other. They don't give a fuck. They're just like, oh, you want to get divorced? Okay, cool. 50% goes here, 50% goes there. We're done.
All right. So
I mean, the
does that
problem
that,
is like the
does that
initial
mean,
beginning
CTV,
of the
that you
government
think
being
that people
involved.
should be Toft, I was going down a line of questioning. So CTV, does that mean that you think that it's like okay for them to legislate in that way ultimately, as long as it's just not based in religious value? So if people vote for something that abolishes gay marriage, like that's it, you're totally fine with that direction. You think that that would be good?
I think that all individuals have their own personal motivations for how they end up wanting the government to form at all, right? So, like, regardless of what someone's personal motivations are, the idea for people should be to try to figure out how to make the language of government as inclusive as possible between all the different peoples.
And so, do you think that is a very big mistake to make it the religion centralized? You never have to prove what God says. You never have to prove even that God exists, and yet that is beyond reproach in this declaration. That is beyond reproach in this document.
Look,
Well, it's just
you'll
their
not-
values. Like this
What-
is how all legislation works. Is
Yeah, their
people
val-
have
but the values-
values, and
yeah,
then
but
they
the
legislate
values-
based
Wait,
off
wait, wait.
them.
Our
Let him-
values
wait.
are intersubjective. Sorry.
Okay, just really quickly, just let people try to finish their statements, or at least the majority of their statements, before you interrupt them. CTV, I want you to respond because that was a question directed towards you. We're going to go to Taff, and I saw Rob raise his hand.
Yeah, when it comes to understanding the language, right? Trying to, and what was it you just said there, Jangles? Just remind me.
I say what? So, if it's based in this omnipresent thing, would you ever have to prove that God exists and these are His actual values?
Right. So, like, this is the way that I understand Constitution, Bible, right? Constitution is the legal framework that the framers who had already read the Bible and understood all of the philosophy there, right? And a philosophy from a lot of other places while you're sitting there shaking your head, James. Yes, they did, right? So they read all of these things and they knew all these things. They definitely understood markets. They had their own experience with fiat currency to begin with. And this is how we end up with the framework of the Constitution over here that was ratified in 1789, right? So when we understand that, and then you understand that these men grew up lifelong Christians, right, in faith, was reading the Bible, etc. Whenever they go to codify government, I understand that in this example that the Constitution is the legal framework and the Bible is the philosophy, right? So it's less about trying to understand hard truths as so much as the overarching message for, one, what should the society look like whenever people are not judging one another, they're trying to get along, they're being very charitable to what people are saying, right?
A lot of words to say no.
So
Like,
Yeah,
why-
there's like
Yes.
3,000 words in the Bible. None of them are. There's like 3,000 words in the Constitution. Literally, none of them are God.
yeah, so
Literally none. Zero. Zip. Zilch. Nada. Not one fucking mention of the invisible, fake, fictional
What are
sky
we even
god
talking
who
about
tells
right
y'all to
now?
go do random shit, and then you try to cram his scientific word down all of our real throats. Zero times.
except there's a-
Zero.
I just want
Except
to
there's
ask
a lot of truth in
Jingles,
what
like,
gets said anyway,
what
right?
his
Like, you'd
argument
agree
is
that
exactly.
people shouldn't murder each other, right? That's one of the
yeah,
Ten
I think we
Commandments.
could figure that one out without.
I mean, You
Yeah,
say that,
we can
and
figure
yet
that out without the
you
sky
say-
god.
Yeah, but you say that from the perspective of 2,000 years forward in the future, right? Versus when it was understood back then. So this is an idea that we
2,000 years
understand
ago?
now.
Really?
It doesn't
When they
mean
wrote
that
the
everybody
Constitution?
understood it then. So unless
2,000 years ago?
unless you have like
Wait. You
This is
gotta let
such a
CP
stupid
finish, and then I do want to get
conversation.
to Taft and Rob Noor because they've been on the waiting list.
Yeah, unless you got a time machine to be able to go back into the past, you can't speak to what people knew back then or what they had the ability to know, right? So that's right. That just understand that from the start. And then when you go to try to codify that in government today, I'm just trying to help you understand that one's a philosophy, the other one is a legal framework, and
Yeah,
why
I don't know
cleaning
why
up
it's
the language,
atheism
right,
versus
and removing
theism all
marriage
of a
from
sudden.
the language of government would go a lot further to create the kind of social cohesion that we're all looking for.
Jangles, I want to just do like a back and forth a little bit with you because I'm not exactly sure I totally understand your position. Is it that you think it's inherently wrong to legislate based on Christian or any other religious values?
No,
Or, yeah, go ahead.
sorry. No, I think any philosophy that you have that can go into your legislation. What's worrying about this is they have codified this to be not codified because it's not binding or anything, but it's beyond reproach. The government is simply a vehicle for a greater power that never has to be proven exists, and that is beyond reproach. The entire document, it is God gave the rights, and we're just there to protect.
But
it.
it's their
they never have to,
platform,
reason it.
which makes sense.
Yeah,
Like if you had a Christian party, their platform would be, they would lay out their reasoning in Christian language. You would expect that from a Christian party. That seems
of course.
reasonable to me. Like I think that
But-
you can disagree like theistically and be like, I don't believe in God, so none of this argumentation applies
My
to me.
primary no, well, it will apply if this became law in Texas. If it hopefully won't, but if it did, well, it would apply to you.
What I mean by
And-
apply, as in none of the reasoning is something that you find reasonable. That's what I mean by apply.
And this is what's worrying is because it's beyond reproach. If God says so, God is omnipotent, God is infallible. There is no democratic process that can change that. Our word, our
No, the
state,
democratic
our
process would be
desires
voting.
doesn't have anything to do with what God's natural will is, right? And you never have to discuss that. You never have to demonstrate why marriage should be between a man and a woman. You never have to demonstrate beyond because God says so. Can you prove God said that? You can't. Well, take my word for it. Essentially, it's a tautology.
Yeah, your
God
point
is
is
the
that it's
state.
hard
The
to
state
argue
decides.
with these
No.
people because these people have like fundamental axiomatic beliefs, assumptions.
That they never have to.
Yeah, that you can't like
James,
break them out of. But that's true of everybody. Everybody has fundamental axiomatic
No,
assumptions.
everything. No, all of our actual rights are intersubjective. The state does decide what our rights are.
No, but
What is the power
everyone,
beyond that?
listen, everyone in this conversation has axiomatic values. They have certain things that they assume are good or bad or true or
But how
false.
malleable are they?
It depends on the person, but I think that most people, like people will invent, logical constructions for reasoning out their values. Christians do this too, to varying degrees. But ultimately, like everyone has these basic assumptions, right? Like even Kant had these assumptions. Kant had this belief that like he had reasoned out his logical system. And yet Kant even said that if God came to him and said that the categorical imperative was wrong, he would know that it was a false God because God would only tell the truth. And yet Kant also believed that like certain races were inferior, right? So we know that like ultimately his logical reasoning was really based more fundamentally on certain disgust responses and internal brain mechanisms that he had. So even though people will dress up their beliefs with logic, what we're really talking about is these fundamental assumptions. Everyone has them, and it's reasonable to expect people to legislate based off of them.
My problem isn't that people have different axiomatic belief systems than I do. My problem is that they have encoded this into an infallible. You cannot question it. We have intersubjective belief. It's based on there is no mutual.
but
Let's
I
go
think
back and forth if we base it on this.
I think what Jangles is saying, if I can just like try to make it a little more clear, Dylan.
1 second. Rob.
I think you're right, but it's like such a, I don't know, it's like such a moot point. It's like so obvious, but also
I just feel like it's obtuse.
Can we please throw it over to Rob?
Yeah,
I wanna throw it to
Jangles, I
Rob.
think you're being obtuse.
I mean, if we can return
wait,
to that
wait,
after
wait,
Rob,
wait,
I'm just saying,
wait,
if we
yes.
can return to it
Okay.
after Rob, that'd be cool. I have a response, but yeah, go for it, Rob.
Okay,
I can clarify too.
The first thing I was going to say is my audience was saying they were having trouble hearing Jangles, but I think I figured out how to turn up individuals' microphones. So I think we're good now, Jangles. But I don't know if other people were having trouble hearing. I just wanted to say, and by all means, no one has to answer this, but just for the sake of inclusivity and sort of understanding where we are on this panel, because I don't know everyone, can people let me know if you identify as trans. I know Alexa Primestein 99 always on the grind does. Is there anyone else that identifies as trans on the panel?
Yeah, Rob, I'm trans.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
me too,
just
if you
wanted to
wanna
say
count NBs, so go for it.
trans, but not transgender. Is it,
Well, that
Rhizome?
technically,
Because I
I'm
just
not
wanted to
cis,
say,
technically.
yeah,
So
Rob's
it's
gonna
up
be
to you
annoying.
what you want to
Wait,
clarify.
how are you not cis? How are you not cis again? I would like the clarification.
Okay, this is okay. First of all, I don't understand why people's personal identity are being roped into any kind of arguments right now at all.
He wants to be
Secondly,
Mimi again.
I know he just
No,
wants
no,
like
no.
to do the label thing, but then
No,
okay,
no.
so okay, Rob. Regardless, I'm gonna answer the question for
How are you
Alex.
not
Okay,
cisgender?
I'm
That's
gonna
all I'm
answer the
asking.
question for you, Alex. Holy shit! Because I don't consider myself a dude.
Well,
I'm
isn't
just
a
telling you
dude
what
a
the
hair-
literal answer
Hold on,
is.
hold on, hold on. Isn't
What
a dude
is
a
this
hetero male with a ass?
conversation?
Okay, can we just be? I want.
What is this conversation?
I'm sure we can make a panel topic of what's Rhizome's true gender another day. Okay, I do want to make sure we stay on the Texas GOP
I mean,
platform.
we can go down.
How about we just debate specific points, right?
If they want, like, it's fine.
I think that would be good because, like, I want to debate.
Large man.
This is trans related, so okay, it's a good jumping off point. In the platform, one of the things they say is that they want to limit access to hormone transition up to 21. I'm more on the libertarian side of these things. I think that the government needs a really good reason to regulate what adults are putting in their bodies. And I don't think that that reasoning exists for hormones or medical blockers, which aren't proven to have particularly negative effects. I think that, again, I'm more on the libertarian side of this. So I think that even with like other kinds of drugs, I think it's appropriate for people to be able to choose what they put in their bodies.
I want to jump in on this, and it'll help me clarify my previous points.
Wait, do you need to be 21 to have a handgun, Taftash? Do you believe that?
I don't know what the law is in Texas, but I think it's reasonable to limit guns. Yeah. And in fact, like personally, I think that like
gender. Okay.
So
I'm just trying to get
okay, hold on. I mean, I could give like my full gun stance because I think it's a little bit.
Or we can talk
interesting.
about what you just talked about. Let's stay on topic. I can jump off of that and I can better explain what my previous position was. Yeah, but here's the thing: you're making the assumption that the conversation is how do we best serve trans people? How do we best serve trans kids? That's a great discussion to have. That's not where they are. Right? Because God made man, God made woman in his image. So that's not the discussion.
Yeah, and so that's why I'm arguing it based on principles of liberty, right? I'm not arguing about like the medical efficacy, though I could go down that road with them. I've researched this a lot, but I'm trying to make an argument towards Texas Republicans who I know have these principles, these like cowboy principles of liberty, right? I think that they are going to be receptive to a message that is based more on principles than in the weeds with medical studies.
And I agree, that's very, very valuable. However, a lot of people are not like that. We're discussing particularly the GOP position here, their GOP platform. And that's why it's concerning. I know I've learned better. I have a ton of studies. I have an entire research document, 70 fucking studies on supporting like trans positive stuff. I haven't used it in the past like 5 debates I've had with transphobes because they don't care. It's not going to convince them. Evidence did not lead them to their positions, so evidence will not convince them from their positions. We have to push so far back that where I want to challenge their fucking assumptions. You have to prove why you believe the things you do, and it can't just be circular. It can't just be I believe it because God said so. How do you know what God says? Because I believe that's what He
So
says.
I don't think you're going to convince them out of
Jangles is
theism.
saying that things are intersubjectively able to be proven when you make good arguments for legislation. Like, hey, this is going to work for most people because this is their reality. This is the reality we experience. Like most people fall in love, they want to get married. Like intersubjectively, that's true, right? But we don't just assert like gender is biological and like don't have a foundation for that when we can do some sort of intersubjective analysis and look at like how that concept works in reality. Or
I
like,
don't think that he's saying that. I think that Jingle's is kind of saying the opposite. You can't use reason to like logic these people out of their positions.
No,
so I think the reason or like the way you get people in Texas to change their views on gay or trans people is with something like exposure. Right. So
no, Rhizome was right. That is what I was saying.
Oh, okay.
We determine like rights and laws. We determine them intersubjectively. That's all you can do.
What do you mean when you say intersubjectively? Just real quick.
I mean, we all something exists like social constructs. Things exist because we all agree, or most of us agree that they exist. That's the best we can do. The alternative would be objective, and that doesn't exist. And that's what they're claiming. It's objective. It's beyond question. It exists. These rights exist outside of humans to observe them. And so, yeah, we do determine rights intersubjectively, and therefore we determine laws and morality intersubjectively. That's how we do it. But they don't
Jangles
want
is
the
saying the
conversation to be
closest we can get to understanding reality is by looking at multiple people's understandings of reality and try and like understand what they experience and go through and like a mass amalgam.
Okay, but I think
If I may,
yeah, go ahead.
I'm
Rob.
sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. Please go. Okay, if I may, I don't know that that quite works. This idea that objectivity doesn't exist and intersubjectivity is what we should strive for. Because how do we decide on that intersubjectivity? For example, at one point it was intersubjective, the heinous, bigoted, grotesque belief that your genitalia had something to do with your gender. It's fucking bigoted. I can't believe that we live in a society that just a couple years ago believed that. They thought that if you were born with a penis, that meant you were a boy. That's disgusting. And I'm glad that we could now get over that. But intersubjectively, that's what most people thought. Intersubjectively, most people thought that we shouldn't be teaching gender ideology and sexuality to children, such as kindergartners. But I could see that that was wrong. I don't want to say that that's the belief to have because I'll get kicked off of Twitch. So now I understand that actually all we should do, all of us here, as opposed to a standard of objectivity or intersubjectivity, the best we could do is understand that some people are better than others, and those people are transgender people. And that's why I think Jangles and Rhizome need to stop sort of interrupting and allow the trans people in this panel to talk about their lived experience, because that's all that really matters. So I'd like to hear from Alexa and Tad.
We don't give a shit about truth. This is what you do.
Point
I would like to hear what they say. I don't want to get kicked off Twitch. So
What's
of
the
order?
point of order? Yeah.
Point of order. Rob is going off on his tirade about, you know, people identifying as trans and children. Rob, just a reminder. Parents have to take their sons and then go, oh no, it's a girl, so that the rest of your Christian cult doesn't genitally maim them a month after they're born, all in the name of Christ. Just quick reminder there for you.
If I can respond,
hashtag
I don't
save
want to,
the skin.
Sure. If I could respond, I think you have me misidentified with someone else. I think that the best thing to do. No, listen, I agree with you. I think it's heinous. But why? Where am I part of a Christian cult? Where have I ever said that? So I don't think that your criticism of me. I think that this discussion that we're having now of like 3-year-olds being able to determine like their gender and stuff, I don't think that goes far enough. I think our society will not be a healthy society until we assume that the genitals that we see on every baby, that their gender is the opposite. So if you're born with a penis, we should the default should be to assume that they're women. I don't understand why people ask, like they want to kick you off if you're not transpositive enough. And then when a real conservative like me becomes more transpositive, people refuse to accept. I think maybe you all aren't the trans allies that you think you are, because when someone takes this to its logical conclusion, it is more transpositive. You just want to say that I shouldn't be saying the things I'm saying. Can anyone give me a reason why, if we should have subject normativity and there is no such thing as objectivity, why we should identify any children whatsoever as a gender, and why it wouldn't be better to identify, if we are going to identify, as the opposite gender? Can anyone give me an intersubjective reason why that's not the case?
I have a clarifying question
I could make
for
it.
Alex.
Okay.
Wait, okay. Tops, was that a response to Rob? Because if it is,
Yeah.
I'll let you go first. Then we got to go to Joe Lewis because he hasn't really had much speaking time.
I mean, I think it's interesting that Jangles and Rhizome both bring up this intersubjectivity idea, because I agree fundamentally that I don't think that individuals just working off of their own brain and their own, internal preconceptions can know everything about what is right and the best way to legislate or act morally. And so I think,
just to put an asterisk on that,
yeah,
like could know what is the most realistic picture
of reality.
Society. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I agree absolutely. And so I think a big problem with, deriving your entire worldview, individually, is it becomes sort of solipsistic. It becomes sort of narcissistic. And I think that a good alternative is to defer in some way to the culture and tradition that you exist in. Yeah, I'm making an argument for intersubjectivity.
I think Tops is on our page, man.
Yeah, I'm saying that there's an intersubjective argument for deferring to religion and to culture. And so I think that these Christians in Texas will make the same argument to you. And they will say things like, well, the reason we hold these truths and these values from a secular reasoning is because we are not omniscient ourselves. And so we have to defer to the wisdom of other generations and understand that we might get things wrong in our current day, just because as
The issue
individuals
there
we're
is-
prone to
You're
bias.
painting them
The
way too
issue there is
reasonable.
that they would privilege certain perspectives over others as being more real or speaking like truth to who they are, their identity, right?
Yeah, you were.
I mean, I think that's true, but
you
like
run into a
everyone
big
does
problem.
that.
Well, no, well, everyone does it to an extent, but Christians will work backwards. Like there's a famous Ben Shapiro quote says, "I don't think God makes stupid laws, so there must be a reason why this thing is true." It's working backwards. You decide the truth, and then
I
you
mean,
look
Ben
for
Shapiro
evidence.
is
Then you
not
look
Christian
for
either.
I know, but he's religious.
He's
Okay.
conveniently Christian.
Yeah, he
But,
is
I mean, I
convenient.
think that
Or is
the
he Jewish?
impulse
He's Jewish,
internally
yeah.
for religion is very normal. Everyone's
you
sort of
guys,
religious.
You guys are saying that Ben Shapiro has Christian values when he's so clearly a Jew. Are you serious?
Judeo-Christian
Jangles?
values. and it was
He
more
means
the same
religious.
against
Judeo-
He said
Judeo-Christian.
Christian, he means
You guys
religious.
keep on bashing Christianity. What does Islam think of
Same
transgender
thing.
people?
Do you think
We
you were going
shouldn't
to get?
legislate based on Islamic religion.
Yeah, do you think you had it got you there?
Well, I'm just saying, it's
Um,
just funny. It sounds like you know what you're talking about, but you don't even know what religion Ben Shapiro is. So it's just, I mean, I don't.
We shouldn't
Nobody
legislate
gives a
against
fuck.
any
He said
religion.
Christian,
It
he
doesn't
means
matter
just
who is a
religious,
specific
okay?
religion.
We can move
Judeo-Christian,
on.
He's a
he's religious.
Christian.
My
You
argument was
said he
obviously
uses the
against religious.
Bible. He doesn't follow the Bible, bud.
Yeah, we
Just-
corrected and we moved on easy. All right, Toth, continue.
Anyways, I think that Jingle's point is fundamentally about like it's very hard to assail these values because they're very deeply held and they're held in a kind of axiomatic, assumptive way where they're not derived logically. So I think that the best way to argue with these people is to look at other values that they also have, right, that aren't derived from the same thing. So I think that Texan Republicans are also very libertarian in a lot of ways. So I think that the way that you convince people is by looking at their value structure and looking at values they hold and finding out how certain values play off of each other and how they conflict. And by appealing to one value and saying, you hold this as a value, well, this value would indicate that you believe adults should have a certain liberty over what they do with their body. Doesn't it make sense to allow people over 18 to access these hormones? So that's how you move them away from like the 21 position. And
Yeah.
I think that's a good way. That's a good approach.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, wait, Jangles. Joe Lewis has been waiting for a very long time. I'll make sure he gets to ask Alex Stein his question.
I have a clarifying question for Alex. Should the Bible be the central moral and ethical text that guides individuals through legislation in America?
No.
Why do you believe that?
I believe in separation of church and state.
And there's
Do you
lots
think-
of different people in America.
I was asking Alex, thank you. Do you think that what do you believe within that? Because you mentioned you had a problem with the observation of religion. I'm trying to see where exactly you fall on that. Because you mentioned you're a Texas delegate, you said, or something like that in your opening? Okay. Gotcha. So what exactly do you fall in terms of religion as it relates to the party platform?
As a gender fluid man, I don't know why we're all about labels and identity all of a sudden. So now, I mean, I don't really appreciate that. But I believe that we didn't evolve from pond scum. I don't think that the Big Bang created everything. I don't think everything came from nothing. So I believe that there is obviously, as
The
you
only
guys like to call it,
serious
a man
right-wing
in the
person on the
sky.
panel.
I do believe there is some sort of creator. That's just what I personally feel like. Now, I don't necessarily like organized religion, only because I think it can be corrupted by man. So I don't trust man. So if you're trying to put me in like a certain ideology, I was baptized a Christian, but I don't necessarily like all the pulpit pimps. I don't like the Joel Osteens. I don't like a lot of people in the Catholic Church that molested boys and then covered it up. So I'm gender fluid, dog, and I'm kind of religious fluid. So I believe in God. I believe in the Creator, but I think we should take parts of all religions and follow them. I think that's good to think that after this life we do go somewhere and that we're held accountable for our actions here on Earth.
I believe.
And if I could
thank
rip
you
on
for
that
that
real
answer.
quick.
I have one more follow up. With that in mind, so you mentioned the idea that you don't believe in organized religion. Like, is that a correct thing to say? I just want to make sure I heard
There
that.
should
Well, I mean,
just
I
be
believe in
one-
it. I just don't ascribe
v-
to it, I guess.
One
Got-
v
got- like, so, like,
one
yeah,
v
yeah,
four
yeah.
with
That
me
makes sense.
versus
Do
the
you
leftist.
feel that
That's what it should
within
be.
the party platform of the GOP that they have some sort of centralization of religious thought?
Yeah, I mean, in the conservative movement, I think the majority of them would be considered Christian. But you'd be surprised when you go to when you go there, a lot of delegates are gay, a lot of the delegates are Jewish, a lot of the delegates. I didn't see a lot of Muslim, but there's a lot of Jewish conservatives. So it's not fair to label them all Christian. There's actually a pretty good amount of Jews.
Right, but correct me if I'm wrong. It appeared like within the party platform, it was pretty centered around sort of Christian ideals and Christian values. And I'm wondering how you feel about like sort of the centralization of religion within a document.
Well, I mean, honest to God, I mean, I think Christianity is pretty good. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily bad to I mean, I know you guys hate it, but I don't think it's necessarily bad. So a lot of people that are Christians, I think they have morals, and they do believe that their actions have consequences later on in life. So I don't think it's necessarily bad that they use the scripture to make decisions, but I do think there should be a separation of church and state, and that we can't make all decisions based on the Bible.
Gotcha.
If I could rip off something that you said there, like this idea of the man in the sky, I find that gendered language to be disgusting as well. First off, even if we're no, I mean, as a trans person, you're absolutely. I understand your brain is bigger than mine. I don't comprehend, but I'm just saying this: where there is no proof, even if we're using Christianity, right? Like I never understood. Even before I had my trans positives turn, I think that there's a Christian case for gay marriage and things like that. I always felt that way. We don't even have proof, by the way, and I am sincere about that, but we don't even have proof that Jesus himself wasn't transgender. He could have gone through gender affirmation therapy. He could have had hormone blockers for all we know. He could have had surgery. We don't know. The records of back then aren't really sufficient, right? And Jangles, and I wanted to talk to you specifically with this idea. I'm still trying to struggle with this idea of subjectivity, sort of, what did you call it? Like a collective subjectivity? What was the word?
Intersubjectivity.
Intersubjectivity, right? I want to understand how that doesn't lead to a tyranny of democracy, right? That if 51% believe something, that's because there seems to be a lot of questions here about where do we get our sort of
on how many perspectives
please,
are out there.
Rhizome, I don't mind you interrupting.
So you don't need to.
I got you. I don't mind you interrupting me as much. But you and Joe interrupting trans people, I find to be disgusting. As cis people, I think you need to take a back seat. You can interrupt me, that's no problem. But I just noticed that. Anyways, the question I have is this: we have to have a value system that comes from somewhere, and if it's not objective truth, then there's going to be somewhere that it comes from. So I want to understand. I'll have a quick response to this, but I just want to understand where you all's value system comes from, Rhizome and Jangles.
Oh, I just know everything's true.
Okay,
everything I
and Rhizome.
Not a religious statement, by the way.
My own moral system over others. I'm saying somebody shouldn't be able to just impose theirs based on their own understanding of the world onto other people. That's all I'm saying.
But if there's no such,
what do you think
if there's no
legislation
such thing as if there's no such thing as objectivity,
but it's based on us consensus voting towards it or like into it.
Yeah, so you agree that if it's by consensus of the community, it's legitimate to impose moral. You believe that if it's by consensus of the community, it's legitimate to impose moral beliefs.
So there's two things happening, right? You can, sure, somebody can vote something in and it could have a bad epistemological foundation. I'm advocating that we should have a better epistemological foundation for the beliefs that we legislate into actual codified law.
But what is that foundation?
An intersubjective understanding of what people experience or what reality is.
See, I disagree, and let me say why. Because I think that once you say the objective doesn't exist, the intersubjectivity means that there would be sort of tyranny of a majority. So I think that we do have to understand objectivity does exist, and the objective truth is trans people are better than cis people, and only their opinion should matter when it comes to legislating.
What objective truths can we grasp as humans?
Well, he
trans people are better than cis people.
No, that's very clearly. He said, I think. So he knows that objective truth doesn't exist. That's why he said, I think.
No, it does. There is an objective truth. Trans people are better than cis people in every single way.
Speaking of truth, I have something that was kind of on my mind that Alex mentioned concerning the 2020 election, because within the party platform, there were very clear resolutions. And this is a question, I guess, to Alex and CTV as well, because I'm curious about his thoughts on this. Within the party platform, it overtly rejects the certification of the results of the 2020 election. So my question is, how do you feel GOP members in Texas should navigate around that if that is their party platform?
If I'll go, I mean, like I said earlier, these are the most conservative part of the party. Like, John Cornyn got universally booed, but actually he's like, I think he won by 74% of his vote. And I don't think anybody at that convention would have voted for him. And then I think it was, I forget, not Abbott, but I forget. I'm just saying that's not the best representation of the entire party. These are the people that are, most involved. So for these people, they definitely probably would disagree that, 81 million votes were cast. And
right. But my question is, how do you feel like if you are a member of the GOP in Texas that you should navigate around this? Because, like, let's say you believe that the election was properly certified, because you mentioned that earlier. But how do you navigate that from a level of like political praxis of like, because you will have people who are Republican who
Hey,
will
short
say that they reject the
taco.
results of the election.
This
So my
discussion is a
question is,
dumpster
how
fire.
would you navigate around those people who
Not
believe
very
How
fun.
did you navigate all the people that said the election was stolen from Hillary in 2016?
That's not the question that
There's
I'm
just,
asking.
like, a lot of
I'll do it the
memes.
same way
How
that
do you navigate around
the same
that?
way you navigated around those people. I navigated around them the exact same way.
So what was the way that you navigated?
What was the way that you navigated?
Yeah,
I'm asking how he would. I'm just
Well,
asking how you navigate
and he's
around that.
clearly asking you how you would. So now you got me asking how the fuck
No,
you
but
would, because
I'll
I'm fucking
gladly-
curious.
Christ.
I'll
Fucking Joe,
gladly
how
answer.
did you navigate it?
Okay.
Let me turn this bitch down.
Okay. What?
I did answer. I said I navigated exactly like you.
So you didn't answer. Have a spine.
I didn't
Answer the question.
I have a
That's an
spine.
answer.
I'm telling you, I navigated the same exact way that they navigated the 2016
Which is?
election when everybody
Well,
said,
what is the
Which
way that
is?
you navigated it?
We can move off of
everybody
that if he
said it
doesn't
was
want to
stolen from
answer.
Hillary, so I'm
Everybody?
doing the exact same way.
We can move off of that if he doesn't want to answer. I'm okay with that.
Universally,
just
people on the left didn't
mostly
think that the
Rob
election was stolen
Noor.
from Hillary. Is that
I'd
But
be
also
really
sort
interested
of
if an entire like
CTV.
state made it their like
And Conspiracy
Democrats made it
Council.
their party platform.
Well,
instead.
in fairness, the Democrats did make it their platform. They had a coup against Trump for 4 years, where they thought that the election was stolen. That was
Really?
concocted by
Show me the
Hillary,
party
actually
platform.
colluding. Sure, it was concocted. It doesn't matter if it was on the platform. It's even worse because it
Yeah.
wasn't just a platform.
Rob
it was
Noor's
enacted.
actually
Hillary Clinton
sharing
did collude with a
genuine
young Russian
opinions
spy,
now.
and the FBI accepted that and spied on Trump and engaged in a coup for 4
Okay,
years.
can we-
But it doesn't matter because the point
That
is,
takes it
with this
seriously.
line
Can
of
we-
questioning,
Can we
Well,
please
well-
bring it back to the actual like party platform? If not, we're just gonna move on and we're gonna skip
Yeah,
this.
I mean,
Well,
I'm
so
cool.
with the party
Like,
platform specifically, with this question, like people could have these sort of questions, like in their party platform, they could say, "We don't in this particular state, we don't certify electors." There were other people like Benny Johnson that said that they didn't certify electors in the 2016 election. You had the Democratic Party. I don't know if it was written into their platform, but they all agreed with Stacey Abrams that the election was stolen from her. I just wanted to make this point, much like we have to be very careful around these conversations on gender and things like that, because nobly Twitch will
Here it
censor
comes.
anyone that says
Here
things
it
they don't
comes.
like. Similarly, Alexa has to be very careful about talking about whether or not the election was accurate in 2020, because he could be, or she, or whatever pronoun you're choosing to use today, could be banned off YouTube if they say anything. So the navigation will be that we both firmly, I can tell you right now, I firmly believe whatever the people at Twitch and YouTube tell me I need to believe to keep my channel. That's what I firmly believe.
It's a real shame that we've
actually
lost
agree
this
with
kind of
that.
content from the internet with Rob getting banned. Don't you? Would
The-
you like to
the-
have more of
actually
this?
The question
agree with
that I
Rob.
have,
Whatever YouTube says, I agree with.
the question that I have
Right.
but then you said like, however I navigated, you navigated. So I'll ask it again. If you don't want to answer it, that's fine. But how do you believe that you, as someone who believed that the election was properly certified, should navigate around other Republicans who believe that the election was not properly certified?
Well,
How
Joe,
do you
I-
navigate
Joe-
around those individuals?
Joe,
It's
let me
very
ask you a
easy.
question.
I'm
Hold on,
very
hold on,
nice
hold
to
on.
him.
One at a time, please.
Yeah, look, Joe.
I specifically asked this question to Alex, so I'd love to answer from the answer first. And then I'm glad to hear
Okay.
Jeff's
Yeah,
opinion.
but I feel like we're going in circles, so
Well,
I just
okay,
want to
but
ask, right?
if the
Joe,
question
you're
is-
leading it.
wait,
You're
Wait, CTV.
I'll answer
CTV.
it.
The question is directed towards somebody, and I think that person should be allowed to answer.
I just want Joe to. I want his advice. I want his fucking advice. He's obviously has his own
CTV,
fucking
stop.
idea.
CTV. I gotta throw it up.
I'd like to answer.
Okay.
So, Joe, I don't know if you
I could
watched any
have
of my
like a
content, but at the
conversation with
latest GOP
Jangles. Like
convention,
I could
not
just go
only
back
called
and
out Ted
forth
Cruz,
with
I called out
Jangles,
Dan Crenshaw.
and that would be
They were both
interesting.
conservative. So the thing is, the difference between me and you is I don't believe in identity politics. I don't use my whole identity on one
Do I have a
party,
I feel
on
like-
one
I
platform.
don't know if this is
believe
red
in
just
that.
from
So what I
bullshit.
do is
Fucking
I treat
answer.
people.
Or
I'll answer
if
it. I
it's
treat people
Bruce.
nice and with respect. I don't have to agree with everybody, and there's people that I think are hypocritical. I call them out. So that's what I do, bud.
I guess I
Okay,
was
so
kind of
God
like
bless
this.
YouTube and God bless YouTube and Twitch.
Yeah,
So
but I
Kyle,
guess,
God
like,
bless YouTube
pressure.
and Twitch for
the
telling us
thing
what
that-
we have to
the
think.
thing that I'm
God
kind of
bless.
stuck. The thing that I'm kind of stuck on is that these are individuals who are, I would argue, at least in my state, are quite aggressive about sort of the ideas, not only of the presidential election,
And the
but of
people
other
on the
issues
left
that
aren't
are
aggressive. People on the left aren't aggressive.
Is it
No,
possible for you to do anything without whataboutism? Can you just
Can,
answer a
No,
question
I'm just
directly
asking.
with
You're
what
telling
you
me
think
you're
without
gonna make
whataboutism?
it-
Stop.
If people on the right are aggressive,
wait,
I don't
stop.
think that's
Alex.
fair.
no, that wasn't
Wait,
what I said.
okay.
Sure.
Okay, let me be clear. If somebody's asking a question, please allow them to finish said question before jumping, okay? Joe Lewis, please finish the question.
Yeah, so the thing that I'm stuck on, and again, I'm not trying to paint that all Republicans believe this, but it has been shown because it did cost Jack Ciattarelli a very large electorate of voters in my state that when he took a hard stance against that the election was properly certified and that the election was valid, he got a lot of pushback from Republicans who side with Donald Trump and more on the farther right. And he navigated it in a particular way. Granted, that cost
He
him the
is
election in
in
certain votes in certain
Ukraine.
aspects.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand how you navigate around those people who would believe contradictory to your belief in this
It's
case.
tough because I'm
and
not a
then, like, how you
Republican.
feel
So I'm
Texas
like,
GOP
I
can
feel
navigate around that
no
broadly.
obligation
That's all I'm
to
trying to ask here. Is
defend
that clear, or
Republican
can I
positions.
clarify?
Well, and I
Unless
believe in
they're good,
individualism.
unless
I
they're
don't-
like
I said, you know, just
actually
earlier, I
with
don't
my
believe in identity
values.
politics. So I believe people are allowed to have different, you know, schools of thought within a party. So I would just encourage him to be friendly and be nice, and show love and spread love instead of hate. That's how I would navigate around it.
Okay,
Joe,
for
what's
sure.
your
I
advice?
can't- if
What's
I
your
can-
advice on how to solve that? What's
I
your
have
advice,
no,
Joe?
I'm not asking for advice, which is
So
asking
he
how to
just
navigate.
wasted this whole fucking time for the last 10, 15 fucking minutes so we could do a circle jerk around this fucking idea that you got. It wasted everybody's fucking time. It's been nothing but fucking irritating.
Did you want to
Alright, tell us
answer
what
it?
you
Because I
think then,
mentioned
Jesus
because I mentioned
Christ.
Dylan mentioned
CTV,
well,
where
you
are you
mentioned
at
that you wanted to
then?
answer as well. So what's your answer to that?
Let's see TV.
I mean, if
I'll
can
ask
I
the
answer
question.
it as well?
Oh, sorry, Tom.
Well,
Yeah.
If
I
you'd
just
like
I
to.
wanted to make sure, like, CTV, did you want to answer the question or no?
I want this conversation to keep moving instead of just staying in this Joe circle jerk where he doesn't answer any part of anything. He just wants to present these grand ideas and then try to put somebody boxed into a corner, right? That's all fucking disingenuous bullshit, and I've about had my fucking fill of it. That's where
I've
we're
asked
at.
2 questions the entire night.
Joe, if I could real quick, like if I
That's what I
asked
wanted
you
to
a
answer, though,
question
right?
and I had a feeling that you were only allowed to give one answer, right? Because the primary platform you're on would ban you if you gave a different answer. Do you think it would be helpful to keep asking the same question over and over again?
Why did you think that my question was a bannable offense?
Because if for example, if Alex would say, hypothetically, I know he wouldn't, or she, or whatever pronouns they're using today, wouldn't believe this, right? But if they did believe, I believe the election was stolen, which I'm not saying. I would never say such a thing. You can't say that sort of thing online. I wouldn't say that. YouTube knows better than us. If he, she, they say that, they'll lose their channel. They'll get banned. And in fact, Dylan would risk losing his channel. Similarly, there are certain things about drag queens and transgender and things like that that we can't say on Twitch or will be banned. So we're put in this position where there's only one right answer. Luckily, YouTube and Twitch knows the right answer. So that's fantastic. And I can't help but believe, Joe, you keep asking this question because it seems like a lot of people on the left here have constantly been shirking the points that the objective reality is transgender people are superior. They should be the ones deciding the platform of the Texas GOP. Any GOP members that are trans in
I wanna
Texas, it should be
respond to
totally up to
this.
them what their platform is. And if they're okay with this platform, I don't think any cis person on here has the right to disagree. You all agree objective truth doesn't exist, that we need to have intersubjectivity. And so the best intersubjectivity, it's not all equal. For example, we don't care what white supremacists think. We don't say just because there's a lot of them that they should have input on policy. We would all agree with that. So it's clear that trans people are superior, as Twitch wants us all to admit. I'm glad that they're finally pushing for that policy. And so we should all adhere to whatever the trans people think about the policy is best. That's what we should go with.
Do you believe that there is a single answer to the question of how Alex Stein, as a Republican and a supporter of the GOP, should navigate around people who believe that the election was not certified properly? Do you think that there's a singular answer to that question?
Yeah, the
And do
answer
you
to
also
your
believe
answer-
that singular question leads to that being a violation of terms of service on Twitch?
The answer to your
If I
question
may,
Joe,
okay.
Go ahead,
Is
Rob.
CTV still there? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just answer this. I don't know. As a trans person, Alexa, Alex, whatever name, Primestein 99, that they choose to go by today.
It wasn't
whatever pronoun
funny.
that they
It
choose to
wasn't
use,
funny the
are
first
smarter
time.
than me. So
It's
similarly,
still
when
not
people ask
funny.
me, what is the will of God? I can't understand because God is an
Top,
entity
I wanna
above
hear
me.
that
The
reaction,
same is
dude.
the same of trans people. So subjectively, two trans people could disagree, but the objective truth is both of them will have a better take than all of us cis people. So I don't think you could comprehend a trans person who's superior to you, like Alexa, Primestein 99, what their answer would be of this. Could it technically violate YouTube's terms of standard? Yes, because as we've seen during Pride Month, none of these corporations will stand up for Pride Month. None. Is anyone else shocked? You can't hear about Pride Month anymore. You can't see one commercial. You can't see one product. There's no parades. There's no Twitch streamers talking about Pride Month. None of it, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if YouTube banned a proud trans person like Alexa Primestein 99, always on the grind, or anything that he wants to go by today. Of course, they would jump at the opportunity to ban trans people.
Rob, it's
of
not
course.
funny. It wasn't funny the first time. It's still not funny.
Okay,
Just
Joe, so
Well, as a trans person,
normally.
you're probably right. You're
Rob,
probably
the
right.
thing
as a
that
trans
Thank
person,
you.
I would have to understand it. Yeah.
Joe,
The
to
thing that I'm
answer your
confused
question.
about, one more second, CTV, because I don't think Rob answered my question.
That's
You
okay. I
answered
want to.
that.
Let me answer this.
Yeah, and I'll let you do that. I just want to make sure this
Oh,
is very
God, here
clear
we go.
because he didn't answer my question.
Can we just give it a
So-
CTV
Yes, I did.
instead of actually listening to like having Rob just get another
The
chance
same
to do what he's
joke.
trying
I
to
agree.
do?
What's
For the
up, CTV?
100th time.
Okay,
What's up,
Joe,
CTV?
since you asked the question, the best way to navigate the election, which addressing that
Holy
issue,
shit, it
right,
got
is
no
stay focused
laughs.
on like the
He just
procedure. I would
keeps
be
going.
encouraging all individuals of Texas and all of the other states, right, to be getting involved in the election procedures as they're happening around you, especially if you think that there's a potential problem for corruption. So the best way for you to do that is for you to be verifying what's going on with your situation locally, and for other people that are in their local situation to be doing the same thing. I'm sure that there's probably Facebook groups of people that are probably affiliated along different political lines that are going to be communicating with each other as to what they see and how legit shit looks. Right. So that right there would be the number one thing that as a Texas delegate that I would be trying to communicate to the people, which is if you're worried about it, please, absolutely, we need all the help that we can get. Get down in here in your local office and get involved. Absolutely.
You know, if
mentioned
I
something
believed that
about-
the election was stolen, I would simply prove it.
You mentioned something about language, CTV, which I found kind of interesting because you mentioned that
Say a lot of things that are
you
interesting.
want to remove, like, one way that we can go about this thing is remove the language of marriage. And I'm wondering what you feel the language of marriage should be replaced with.
Partnership, civil partnership.
That exists. So why would there be, if there's language, the thing I'm stuck on is that that language does exist, not directly in that like civil partnership, but there are things like that. So is there, am I
There's
missing
nothing like
something,
that codified into law that civil partnership equals marriage, right? So since that's not the case, the first thing to do would be to remove the language of marriage from government. That way the government then, understands that civil partnership is what everyone is entering into when they enter the legal contract, right, of, their civil partnership, which is then going to include all the various tax benefits and et cetera, that is always a part of the conversation as to why we're trying to extend the definition of marriage to all of these other groups. So if you're like, nope, marriage is not a part of it anymore, civil partnership's what you're looking for because you're trying to interact with the government and the tax system. Understanding
agree,
that is
yeah.
the simplest way.
I agree
Okay,
with
so you're
CTV. Like
basically saying
the
create a
government should
separate
not be involved in
So you're basically
labeling
saying
things as marriage.
Put marriage firmly in the realm of religion. The government no longer declares what a marriage is, and correct me if I'm wrong. Anybody who wants to enter into a civil partnership can.
Right.
And do you, so then, okay, sure.
Quick point of order. Reminder to everybody on the panel, the reason why marriage is a function of government and not the church is because it was a function of the church for 1,000 years. And then all the conservatives decided that they needed laws to keep white women from marrying former slaves. So they started turning marriage licenses over to the states so that the states could then craft laws that said white women can't marry former property. And that's why marriage is a function of the government and the state now, and not the church, because of the very same conservatives who now it's inconvenient for them. Imagine fucking that.
Yeah, the government should have never been involved with regulating who you can marry. Because again, it should just be like a choice between two people. If they want to label their partnership as a marriage, so be it. And if you want to provide tax incentive for long-term stable partnership, do that. And you don't need to call it marriage, which is associated with this religion. Let people decide whether or not they want to individually call it that.
And James, do I got your name right? James, do I have your name right? James, I don't know that specific history of that. I would actually be interested to hear that that's where the government get involved in marriage. Yeah, I should. You're right. I'm curious. Was that the same Democrats that also pushed gun control legislation to keep property from having guns in the form of freed slaves? Those same Democrats?
Who said anything about
Just curious.
Democrats? I said
No,
conservatives.
The same Democrats that also gun control as a
you listen like
Nice
you read,
pivot,
huh?
Just curious.
Your listening skills are
Very
on par
on
with your
topic.
reading skills, Rob? Is that what's going on here, Rob? You're deficient at
Were
both
they
reading
Democrats?
and listening?
Were they Democrats? I was just curious.
No, I'm asking. I'm just asking questions.
No, feel free to ask. I'm just playing. I'm listening
I'm
to you. I
asking,
absolutely am. And
honestly.
since we're talking about the history of what Democrats back in the day and their treatment
I'm not.
of freed
You
slaves
are.
was,
I'm
I
not.
just want, there is another issue that's in the Texas GOP platform that regarding gun control and things like that. And if we're going to bring up past cases of what the history of these things were, I just wanted to ask, is it the same people that did this that you're talking about marriage that were the same racists that wanted gun control because the starting of gun control was to keep it out of the hands of Black Americans? Just curious, those Democrats, was it the same ones?
I don't know. I wasn't talking about Democrats. I was talking about conservatives.
You should read
which are
more.
in a party, they're an ideology.
You should read more.
Oh, no, I know
should
the
read
answer.
more.
I'm just not going to humor you.
Oh, so it
because
was the
you're
same
ignorant.
Democrats. Cool. No,
I
it
didn't
has nothing to
mention
do with
Democrats.
Who
You did.
fucking
because,
It
again,
doesn't
cares?
matter.
identity
I'm accurate.
politics.
I'm accurate. I'm
Yes,
accurate.
yes,
that
your
they were
identity
Democrats.
politics
So,
are very
Rob,
accurate, Rob.
Right, I am
Yes.
accurate. I am
Question
accurate.
to
Yes.
show yourself that you're correct. Nice job, man.
Well, I usually am, unless a trans person disagrees with me, and then I'll bow down to that. I
shit, I
obviously am
can't
incorrect.
Rob,
I-
who
can I have a point of order here just to explain myself for like 2 or 3? Can I explain myself for like 30 seconds?
That's awesome.
Can I explain myself for 30
bitter.
seconds,
Rob,
please?
I just wanted
Rob.
you to say that.
Rob, why do
terrible.
you need to explain yourself? Why?
Okay. I came on here at one point. I debated in the Hippy Dippy Championship. There was finally we saw a trans streamer on Twitch because this platform horribly doesn't have enough trans people in the political
Jesus
sphere.
fucking
And so
Christ.
Dylan himself was
Dog, kick
accused
him. Like,
of
what's the issue,
platforming a transphobe, right? Of platforming a
Has he
transphobe. He
helped
was
anything
accused of
the
that.
entire
And
panel?
so,
No.
please, if I may finish my point, right?
so
He was
boring.
accused of
We can have a
platforming.
good discourse.
No.
It's that simple.
If I could finish, he
He's
was
just
accused of
using the
platforming a
panel to do his own
transphobe.
spiel.
Just stop.
I'll wait. I'll finish my point when I get a chance.
Rob,
Okay.
you can say what you,
Yep.
you whatever you can say, but then I'm going to say something responsive. We're going to finish this topic, okay?
Okay, no problem. And so what people ask conservatives become more transpositive, and there's actually cheering. There was this horrible left-wing guy, I think his name was Stephen Bonnell. He went by the name of Destiny. They kicked him off as well. He wasn't transpositive enough. And now when a right-winger becomes more transpositive, and we have right-wingers like Alexa Primetimes 99 Stein here, who's a right-winger who's trans, all of a sudden talking about trans issues and focusing on that identity is a bad thing. And people want to run from this conversation. I think that it's deplorable. I think that all the cis people here should be ashamed. I think that when I'm acknowledging that I made mistakes in the past and that what I said in my language wasn't inclusive enough, I think every cis person here should probably give their platform up, at least for some amount of time, to trans people to be able to talk about the issues they want. And I think that the points I'm making are very salient and in line with what we want streamers. The reality is most of you all's audience want people that agree with only left-wing positions and don't want platforming of right-wingers. And so when right-wingers become more left-wing, all of a sudden it's annoying. We can't talk about this stuff. I just think it's disgusting, and people are showing themselves to not be the trans allies that they really claim. And it's not like this is off topic. The heart of what we're talking about this Texas bill has to do with gender ideology and things of that nature. So I don't understand how what I've said's been off topic. I'm just very transpositive, and it seems that a lot of cis people here are unable to handle that.
Well, Rob, I can meet you where you're at.
No, everybody. Okay, Rob. It's very sad that your YouTube channel got removed and your Discord got banned. Now, I don't care when Alex Stein says a joke because Alex Stein is funny. Okay, this has you aren't funny, and you said it the first time, you said it the second time, you said it the third time. I get the joke. We all get the joke. We get it. Alex is trans.
What's
You're
the joke?
trans. It's fun. It's very funny.
I'm
Get
not
it.
trans.
Okay, you're not trans. Okay,
No.
fantastic. Okay, good. We get it. We get the joke. Can we move on and stay on topic though? It's
If I
like we
can
always
make
just
it
repeat
a
the
little
joke
bit
over
more
and over.
serious, like I think
What am I joking about? What am I saying that's a joke? I can't be trans positive? That's the joke? I can't stand up for trans people?
Yes, you're not. You're banned from doing that now. Yes, we're making a new rule that Rob cannot be transpositive. Yes.
Wow. You know what?
Okay.
Can I just say one thing? I just want to say one thing, and
Okay.
because I feel like that anyone that thinks that we shouldn't be trying to raise trans voices doesn't understand that they're actually the most minority
Right.
voice, right? And that's why they're similar,
Okay.
but not the same.
Let me be clear.
And we need to
Literally
lift
don't
up
Okay,
those
let me be
think
clear.
we're
voices.
having
Let me
this
be clear.
conversation.
Let me be
Dylan,
clear.
Topic
I'm
two.
trans. No, it's okay.
Do we
Stop,
think topic
stop.
2 is going to go well with these
Rhizo,
people? Like, are you
Rhizo,
serious?
Rhizo.
Okay,
Okay,
go
let me
ahead.
be clear. I'll be the transphobe and say, stop. Okay, I'm transphobic now. Please, it's not funny. Okay. Above all else, what beats all my rules is making sure it's a fun and enjoyable show. The joke isn't funny anymore. For the love of fucking God, stop it. Okay. Look,
I can't stop being transpositive. So if you need to remove me for being transpositive, I'll tell you that I'm going to approach the debate the same way for 3 hours because I refuse to be silenced by people that want to silence transpositive voices. I'm not going to be.
Are you gonna be like this the whole time, Rob?
I don't hear any audio.
Why would I not be myself the whole time and be a new conservative transpositive person? Why would I not be this? I don't understand.
Okay. So we're gonna continue with the show.
Easy as that.
Hey, I'm sorry. I just
W.
I can deal with jokes if they're funny. If you just repeat the same joke over and over and it's not funny, I'm done. Okay. So we're gonna move on to the next topic. The next topic, after everybody does closing statements. Okay. I'm gonna start with CTV.
Yo, this is the best I've ever heard him sound.
This panel is
CTV,
so
you're
good,
muted.
guys.
We can't hear you, man.
We can't hear you, CTV.
I think
we
you
can't hear you.
speechless. I don't know.
This is going so well.
Okay, I'll move on
Look,
then.
no,
Okay.
I look. I just feel like, man, I just don't want to be too positive about things right now. Okay, so we had a fun topic. We got another topic coming up for everyone. Okay, so stick around.
Okay, next we're gonna throw it over to Alex Stein, 99 Prime Time, Tucker Carlson's #1 guest.
The top guess. I don't even know what we're arguing now. What are we arguing?
It was the
It's just
Texas
closing
State. It was the
statements.
Texas State GOP. Like you could wrap it up. We're going to the next topic.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, like I said, guys, you have to remember these are the biggest political activists, in the conservative movement of Texas. So I mean, liken this to like the biggest conservatives on the left, like Antifa. So for them to say, oh, these are wild, crazy policies, I would argue that the same people there would think, some of the left wing policy that, abortion, trans, these are like, big and what are you talking about? Goals of the party. They're completely opposite of what yours are. So that's probably why it's a little shocking. So, that's my only, point is that of course it's going to go against what you believe because it's the total opposite.
Okay, I'm going to throw it over to James.
Everybody, your reminder that the Texas State GOP is a theocratic fascist organization who solely wants to base the entirety of their 22-page legislative agenda on what they believe an old fat white dude sitting on a cloud surrounded by dead flying babies playing harps watching you masturbate might have thought 2,000 years ago.
Bro, epic.
Okay, I'm going to throw it over to Taft.
Okay, yeah. So I think going off what Jingles said and what Rob Noor was gesturing at through his many layers of irony, I think is that the GOP keeps engaging in this kind of policy making where they just want to like shut down access to hormones or access to gay marriage because they're losing a culture war and can't actually convince people of their ideas. They're unwilling to have those arguments because I think, like Jingles is kind of saying, they're based on these fundamental axioms that aren't really arguable. And I think this is a massive failure of the GOP to focus on just like these temporary, culture war victories where like trans people are hot right now. So we're going to ban access to HRT, but we're not actually going to make an intellectually rigorous or interesting criticism of HRT for minors, which I think exists. Like, I would love to have a conversation with Jangles about the science and the data and the current state of what we know about medical efficacy of HRT. That would be an interesting conversation. And if GOP people wanted to actually make long-term progress, they would be having those conversations and the focus would be on changing the culture that way. But instead, it's about these sort of like temporary victories, which are not going to mean anything. And it's why Rob Noor is just going to get banned off the platform, because he's not willing to actually engage with the arguments or make serious arguments. He just wants to meme, and he just wants to ultimately, at the end of the day, have his opinions and not have to have a discussion about them. So I think it's a real failure. I think it's a real failure of the GOP. And I don't agree with a lot of the positions, just in what they are, but I also don't agree with them strategy-wise. So I think it's a real disappointment.
Okay, I'm gonna throw it now over to Joe Lewis.
Yeah, I do think that there was one part of what Taft has said that I think was very poignant. I just want to just say it right now. I do agree. Trans people are hot.
Okay, Jangles.
Oh wow, Taft, that would have been a much better conversation to have.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I've never had this happen before. The GOP platform, the Texas GOP platform, was so indefensible that literally for an hour and a half, no one defended it. I can't believe we're here. Cool.
Okay. I know I missed somebody. Who did I miss?
It's me.
Rhizome.
Yeah, I mean, it's the
Black
same as
erasure is real.
Jangles. Clearly, all of us just want to say fuck theocracy. So yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the next topic on the list, which has to do with drag. As we all know, the most pressing issue of this day and age is drag. So there's been a lot of discourse, being at its Pride Month, and it being a new thing, getting the looking glass down on it, about children going to drag shows, a drag queen story hour, and other drag performances being around children, and if it could ever be appropriate for a child. This is actually the second time in a row that we've had this topic, but it just doesn't seem to escape the public discourse. So yeah, it's the same question as last week, but with a new podium of guests. This time I'm going to start with Taft.
Okay, yeah. I think that drag is most often an art and comedy form that is very raunchy. It's very sexual. I think it's pretty reasonable to suggest that children don't attend these events. That's usually the criticism, is people say children shouldn't see this. I think this is a good criticism for, frankly, a lot of elements of society. I think that children are in general exposed to a lot of sexually explicit material, which is probably not healthy, and there are more healthy ways to engage with sex. That's not to say that there's like no way that drag could be kid friendly. I can imagine a scenario. We've seen lots of scenarios of it being done poorly and not really being kid friendly. And I think that it's good for LGBT people to just be aware that sometimes you can say things are bad and you don't need to fight tooth and nail to defend every single example of something. So maybe we'll get into specific examples. I think a lot of them are not super defensible, but yeah, we'll talk about that.
Next, I'm going to throw it over to Rhizome.
Yeah, on its own, there's nothing inherently wrong with drag. It doesn't seem to be inherently sexual, nor if it were, would that mean that it's bad for kids. I can't wait to hear what my opponents have to say about why it's wrong.
Okay, I'm going to throw it over to Joe Lewis.
I am kind of like, I'm out of the loop. I haven't seen a drag show in years or attended one where I've seen children, so I'm curious to hear what people's thoughts on and why they believe it's bad, and examples of children being there. And I wasn't there for the discourse. I was arguing with Sansa on the internet, so we'll see what goes on.
Jangles.
So drag is not inherently sexual. If you take sexuality out of drag, it can still be drag. Unlike things like stripping or sex scenes in movies, like those things are clearly like sexuality is the core tenet of it. Drag, it's about gender expression, gender.
Yeah, but it's
performance. You can have
usually
sexuality
sexual.
incorporated within that, but you can also remove it. So it is up to the conservatives on this panel to make the positive claim. You're saying that it's inappropriate. So what I've seen over and over in all these discussions, and it's not just drag. This is the same discussion as the Don't Say Gay bill. This is the same discussion as like LGBT people in children's media. It all comes down to anything queer is deemed sexual by conservatives. If it's the exact same thing, all other variables were the same, but with cis heteronormative people, they'd find it fine. But the second it's queer, it's not fine. So it's up to you.
Well, I have a question. So what separates
Wait,
it?
Wait.
Opening statements.
Alex. It's opening statements. So during your opening statements, you say your opening thing. I'll give you the first. Wait, Alex. I'll give you first go for opening for like the open discussion, so you can ask your question. Next, throwing it over to James.
I find it ironic that the people who bitch, scream, and moan the loudest about the nanny state and keeping the government away from their kids are literally the ones who are such bad fucking parents that they need the government to try to create laws for them to keep their kids away from the horrible drag shows. So to all you parents out there who are literally such bad parents and so incapable of parenting your own children who want the state involved in that process, just surrender your kids over to the state and let the state raise them. And then this way we release you of your burden and we don't have to hear you complain about the like 0.02% of drag shows that are sexual in nature that you want to conflate with an entire art form that's been around for like 4,000 years.
CTV?
Dylan, I don't feel like Rob should have got kicked. He didn't break TOS and he wasn't breaking the rules. And
you make my show shit, you were not going to be on my show. If he did a joke like Alex, he would have stayed because Alex is funny.
I don't know, man. It doesn't set a good precedent. And
my precedent is if you are too unfunny for too long and you don't stop, you can get kicked.
You can just make the joke once. If it gets a laugh, good. Maybe do it again. But like, there's a point.
I even gave him like a chance. Like if that's just gonna, and he said I'm gonna make this the whole show. That was the problem. He like basically said, look, I'm gonna make this the whole show. And I was like, well, if it's the whole show is just gonna be you calling yourself trans and just repeating that joke. I don't care if he calls himself trans, and he did it like 12 times. It's fucking. But he made it boring. I'm sorry.
Think about how that would have turned out during this next discourse. It would have been Rob being very transpositive, and I feel like
annoying.
You don't think so?
No,
I don't see how if he.
And it would have been boring because then you're not even debating the point. You're just like saying like, well, don't speak over trans voices over and over again. That's annoying when liberals do it. Okay, it's gonna be.
Do you think that he was expressing a legitimate opinion, or was he saying something so that he could make somebody look stupid?
Honestly,
I think you have a point.
Honestly,
I just want to say. Go ahead.
Honestly, knowing Rob as long as I've known him, right? It's hard for me to be able to say that he's not being genuine. I just know that Rob speaks in that kind of way all the time, right? So Rob just talks and he sounds kind of angry, kind of like an angry dad sometimes, you know? But whether or not he's being genuine or not, right, is a completely different question, and I don't have the capability to say whether or not he is. I just feel like that the same standard wouldn't have been held for somebody on the other side of politics, and that's.
You think it was genuine when you tweeted a pride flag?
Wait, Joe. Let's. I don't want this to become a new topic, okay? Alex,
Well,
Alex,
I was just gonna
you're
say,
next.
I love sarcasm. I think maybe we're being a little too sarcastic. So I don't know if he needed to be kicked, but I think we were being a little too sarcastic. We're not even talking. We're not having a discourse. So yeah, I see your point, Dylan. Is where I agree with you on that. Okay, so about this, since we're back on topic, because we all came here for a reason to debate this. So for me, I see a lot of people coming in defense of drag shows, and I think it is possible for a drag show not to be sexual, but that's not the case. So the drag shows that I have seen, it's oftentimes you tip the drag queens as if you're at a strip club. So you're simulating a sexual thing. And I would argue that the only thing that separates me and Jangles or me and Dylan is that the person that we have sex with. I think we're pretty much the same, but we have a label like you're either homosexual if you sleep with the same sex or you're heterosexual if you sleep with the opposite sex. So I think sex does define things. So inherently you're talking about a sexual thing to children that shouldn't be exposed to it at a young age. The same reason I don't think a kid should be going to Hooters. I don't think a kid should be going to an adult strip club. The same reason I don't think kids should smoke cigarettes. I think these are adult themed places that aren't necessarily ready for a kid's mind. And I also think young kids are more impressionable because your first experiences with sex, you're more sensitive. The more you watch porn, the more desensitized you get to it. So when these kids see oftentimes a drag queen, they might organically be attracted to them. And then they might have some sort of sexual reaction, and then they might find out later that was a man, and they might have some sort of sexual confusion. So I just think it's the sensitivity level to sexual things at a young age that we must protect kids from. So So that's why kids should not go to drag shows. And I think somebody made a point. I think it is the parents' fault 100% because these kids aren't getting in their car and driving there. So, it's a responsibility of their parents to protect their children. So I just don't believe kids should be exposed to a lot of sexual things, and drag shows are one of them.
CTV, you talked about the Rob thing during the intro. Do you want an intro to talk about the topic?
I think that Alex hit the nail on the academic head, right? You said that very well, sir. From more of a layman's, perspective.
I'm tired
right?
of not getting credit for this. Because I mean the same point, but better.
The problems that I have whenever I see all the examples, Alex being one of the first ones that really pointed it out on Twitter, and then from other sources, we start seeing the exact same behaviors where we have adults dressed in drag and inviting children to be a part of what is evidently an adult atmosphere. And we even have one example where, there was a person in drag that became embarrassed whenever they saw that it was a kid, right? And like when I see that kind of thing, my heart goes out directly to the person in drag, because now it's like, hey, they weren't expecting kids to be there, and the only reason why they get put in that fucked up situation, right, where their face is now the one plastered on everybody. Oh, this person was doing this in front of kids, but the reality is those are the parents weren't, observing the responsibility of what is adult and not adult content to take in, right? So like
Not
that
enough
right
much
there
clout, to be
highlights
honest.
what
We need to get better clout.
is
Oh.
not good about that. And I'm kind of stumbling here for, so we'll just kind of move on from there, but that's it. Ugh.
Okay.
So one question that I have for you guys is, do you think that drag is sexual in all instances, or are there some ways to do drag where it cannot be sexual?
No, it can be done non-sexually, but most of the time it's like
Well, okay.
raunchy comedy or sexual.
Sure.
Like,
what do you think, CTV Alex Stein?
I think that there's a lot of people that, like, say, they would say Mrs. Doubtfire is an example of drag, right? I would see that more as like something like cosplay. I would see that as something different than what I understand drag to be, which is highly sexualized.
So what if your understanding of drag is like a misconception? You understand a very limited aspect of what drag is.
Okay, so then I think that it's important on the people that are actually in the industry for them to understand what the general layman's perspective is, and then attempt to create language that's disassociates the sexual nature of what the majority of the people understand, and then go, hey, this is like this example that maybe we were saying drag time story hour. That's a horrible way to label this thing. Maybe we call it cosplay story hour, right? It's a different message. And it's just different.
Okay, but the drag time story hour, it sounds like you're saying, is not inherently sexual, right?
The difference here is I keep getting examples from guys used to dress up as girls in Shakespearean plays, right? But
you didn't for me. I'm just asking you.
Well, the point of that wasn't to create a like when you say drag, it's understood that it's a man dressed as a woman. Whereas if you just said it's cosplay story hour, you take the whole idea of the sex out of it. Right, and now you're just the character. You could be a fucking eunuch as far as that goes.
But it sounds like what you're saying is just based. It's in the optics of drag, but it's not the performance itself that is sexual. So a drag time story hour is not sexual as far as you're saying it is. It's just the label and people's connotation around like what drag is that makes it have that perception.
CTV just,
Am I right? Well, I just want to make sure I'm right about that.
What I said, yeah.
Is that correct? Is that a correct way of stating your position, CTV?
All right, one more time, because when you both talk,
like the performance itself at Drag Time Story Hour isn't sexual, because you're saying like if they just slapped a different label on it, then it's not sexual or it's not perceived that way. This is more just about the perception, but the performance itself is not sexual, is what you're saying.
The examples that I've saw of Drag Time Story Hour are not anything that to me speaks of inappropriateness, right? Okay. Because somebody dressing up and telling a story, whenever you imply drag on it, you imply sex on it as well, right? Instead of it being any person that could be dressed up as any character.
Based on people's connotations, though, right? Based on like people's connotations for what drag is, right?
Well, because the idea here is that this person doesn't continue to be dressed this way in all parts of their life. As soon as they leave the place where they're doing the story time, they go back to wearing whatever the fuck it is that they were wearing, and they get out of the Mrs. Doubtfire costume, just so we kind of have an understanding, right?
Jangles,
so
really quick. I just want to hear Alex if he thinks that there's a way to do drag that's not sexual.
I mean, I remember watching the movie To Wong Fu. It was one of the first movies that I ever saw that exposed me to drag. And I don't know, Wesley Snipes in drag. I don't know, how sexual. I don't remember him having sex in the movie. So is it possible? Yes, but is it likely? I think most drag shows use raunchy humor.
Then can
and
we just all agree
sexuality.
right now that drag is not inherently sexual?
No, I disagree with that. I think it is inherently sexual.
what?
because
You
you're
just said
changing your
there's
sex.
ways to do it.
I
where
said
it
it's
can't be
possible.
Let him finish.
I said it's possible, but I think overwhelmingly it's done in a sexual manner, in a raunchy manner, where people are sashaying and dancing.
Inherent means there's no
Wait,
way to do
wait,
it
wait,
without
wait,
it
wait,
being
wait,
sexual.
wait. We gotta
Listen,
let Alex finish.
I've watched RuPaul's Drag Race. There's a lot of sexuality, sexual jokes in there. I've been to drag shows where I've seen them being sexual towards kids. So my interpretation of drag is that it is sexual, raunchy humor. Like in a comedy club, you would consider that blue humor. I think it is sexual humor. Yes, majority sexual.
Alex, can I ask a clarifying question on
My
something?
God,
that you
can I?
said? It's super
Jangles
fast.
has
It's
been
super fast.
dying, Joe. Like he's been on the edge.
I understand, but like,
Have you been more on edge than Jangles?
Yes.
Just ask the question. I'll answer it really quick.
Yeah.
Come on.
So you mentioned you went to drag shows, right? I just want to see like where you're at on this, because you mentioned that you've seen I'm assuming drag queens or drag kings be sexual to children. I don't. What did that look like?
They were walking down the stage, and oftentimes they had skirts or they would have bikini cuts, and then the kids were tipping them, simulating as if they were at a strip club. There's footage of it on my YouTube channel, and I thought that was inappropriate for kids, even just the sheer tipping of a kid. And I think just the atmosphere that it was in a bar that would be normally 21 and older, and that the only reason they got kids there is because they actually served food that day when they don't have a normal menu. They called it Drag Your Kids to Pride, and they called it a drag brunch with a limited menu, so you're able to bring underage kids in. So for me, what I saw with my eyes were people, drag queens walking on a stage, doing sexual dances, gyrating their hips, twerking, dropping it to the flow, doing splits as if you were like simulating like sex in front of children, and then being tipped as if they were like a stripper. And then on top of that, they would have the kids play musical chairs on a stage in front of them, and they would have kids, they would walk on the dance floor with the kids. So inherently, it seemed like they were grooming them to be strippers or to be future drag queens.
So you were
No, I'm
saying
jumping in.
at the drag event that you went to, you overtly saw drag queens dancing as the way as you described and bringing chairs on stage to play musical chairs with children. You're saying that you went to a drag show and saw that?
Yes.
Thank you for your answer.
All right, so I'm jumping in. Both of them proved me right. I was 100% correct in my statement that what makes it sexual to them is it being queer, not the act itself. You know how I know? TV admitted. Drag time story hour? No, it's the connotations of drag. The actual events that occur during Drag Queen Story Hour are fine if you call it something else.
No, he
Now-
said like tipping them, like as if they were
Yeah,
strippers.
No. CTV said Drag Queen Story Hour would be fine if you call it like cosplay Story Hour. The label doesn't make anything sexual. All right, I just drew a picture. Okay, I have labeled this hardcore pornography. Is it hardcore pornography? It's a square and a circle. The answer is no. The label doesn't matter. The act matters. All right.
But Jingles, you
Drag is not.
understand.
Hold on. Drag is not grooming. Grooming is grooming. Sexual acts, sexuality is. That's. It has to actually involve sex. Just drag. When you say dancing sexually, that's a lot of interpretation. All right, what makes something sexual in your eyes?
Like twerking and doing like that.
Why is
that's the
twerking
thing.
sexual?
Because you're shaking your butt, and that's oftentimes a point of sex. A butt is near, it's a sexual organ.
So because your hips can sometimes be used in sex, that means anything you do with your hips that is sexual.
No, because
Yeah,
it's
okay, no.
simulated
No,
movement.
don't say them.
Don't
say
moving
these.
your butt and
Wait, let him
twerking and
finish.
humping is sexual. Yeah, the act of humping on a stage is sexual because that's how you have sex when you hump. I don't know if you've ever had sex, but yeah,
I don't think.
hump.
Yeah, I have had sex. That's why I know what it is. That's why I know that like
So
twerking
it-
is
the
not
The
sex.
thing that Jangles is getting at
Why
is that
make this
drag
argument?
isn't the issue.
Twerking
It's
is
the
obviously
whatever,
sexual.
or the perceptions that people have. It's not drag in and of itself. And my
Yeah,
questioning
Yeah.
earlier
Point of
proved
order. Point of order.
really quick.
Okay.
My questioning earlier proved that all of you guys believe that there's a way to do drag that doesn't have sexual connotations, that doesn't lead to the problematic outcomes.
I believe it's
just about
possible. I don't
it's just
think
about
it's-
the misconceptions or the perceptions about what drag is and the associations that people have around it that give it that feeling for you. That's what we already established this.
Okay,
Yeah,
I want
I
Alex.
I agree. I just
I
want to ask
Alex
this
to
question:
respond.
is what is the difference between a heterosexual male and a homosexual male? What is the difference?
Why
What's
does
that
that
to do with
question
drag?
matter
I'm
as
just
regards to
asking. What,
drag?
it's relative because this is Jangles.
One is
What the
attracted
difference-
to men and the other is attracted to women.
Okay, so when you say attracted, does that mean have sex with?
Sometimes.
It means desire to.
Wait, hold on. Have
Yeah,
you had sex
so-
with everyone you were attracted? No, shut the fuck up. Do you have sex with everyone you're attracted to?
I wish I could. There's a lot of women out there I'd love to have sex with that I'm attracted to, but I can't.
Okay. So obviously the answer is no. By being attracted to someone and having sex with them, you cannot conflate
But
attraction with sex.
what I'm trying to define is the difference between a homosexual and a heterosexual is a homosexual wants to have sex with the same sex, and a heterosexual wants to have sex with the opposite sex. Correct?
Not necessarily. You could be just attracted to. You can
But that's what
curious as-
wants to
But
have sex
attracted
with
to
means.
attracted to sexually, right?
Okay. Do you feel comfortable, like, if a 10-year-old has a crush, do you feel comfortable describing it that way?
Dude, why are you talking about a 10-year-old?
thi-
What does that have to do with
No,
anything?
no,
That's weird,
I-
dude.
I was very clear
Why
in
is
my
this
distinction between
devolving?
attraction and wanting to have sex. When a 10-year-old has a
attracted to
crush, is that how you
10-year-olds?
would still describe it?
Dude, I don't know anything about 10-year-olds having crushes.
Well,
and I
no,
don't ever
because
want
they
to have
wouldn't.
anything to do with it.
They wouldn't know what sex is. Like
Exactly.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
we can have attraction without necessarily having sex
So
or
Jangles,
sex being involved in that.
So Jangles, you said the CTV a minute ago, right? So we go to the drag definition according to Merriam-Webster, right? The 7th alpha definition: entertainment in which performers caricature or challenge gender stereotypes as by dressing in clothing that is stereotypical of another gender by using exaggeratedly gendered mannerisms, or by combining elements of stereotypical male and female dress, and often wear elaborate or outrageous costumes. The exaggeratedly gendered mannerisms, most people, when they are in drag, if not all people, when they're in drag, choose sexual, exaggerated gendered mannerisms to display them in drag. Right? This is why
How
I
do-
pointed to a different
This is
thing.
nonsense.
This is why I pointed to something completely different, so that it removes sex from the entire conversation, as in cosplay, because the very nature, right, of drag has sex as a part of it through gendered mannerisms.
I have a
Oh,
question.
CTV, did you have ginger with my mom last night?
Wait. Okay, one at a time. Okay?
CTV, if I did cosplay with big boobs, am I making it inherently sexual?
Well,
Yeah, because boobs.
that
are
is a
sexy.
sexual thing.
So, like, if I cosplay an anime character with boobs, now I'm doing a sexual cosplay.
No, it depends
a
on like
lot of
how
anime is
exaggerated
sexual.
it is. But yeah, it
That's
could be
fair.
sexual. Like
Okay, but
if
I
you're
would just
wearing
equate
like
this, yeah. So
if
all
you're
I would
wearing like
equate-
lingerie and have like giant fake boobs,
I would
obviously,
just say that this
right?
is the same as drag, right? There's ways to do drag where you can make it more exaggerated and you got big boobs or whatever, and it's more sexual. And there's
Right.
ways to do it. You're just doing a performance.
everyone
And even
agrees-
if you have big boobs, it doesn't mean they're like out on display flopping around, and that's
Yes.
central to the performance.
Rhizome, you got to ask a question earlier of all the righty people.
Sure.
I wonder if I can ask a question to the lefty people, which is, do you think that in general, drag tends to be sexual more often than not? Do you believe that's the case?
In general, yes. Which
Okay.
is why you can have a separate event that
There you
is
go.
very explicitly not sexual. Alex, what do you think? Like, dude,
What's wrong
Okay,
with
wait.
you calling it
Before
something
Well, no,
wait,
yeah,
before wait,
let's just
wait,
go one by one.
Wait. Before we jump around, I want to also welcome Turk. He's being a replacement for tonight, and I really appreciate that. As I continue to steal his laptop in Ukraine, come and get it. I appreciate him coming on.
That's
So I just
why you're gonna be flying me out to pick it up.
yeah, he's gonna fly out and pick it up for Turk.
Yeah.
I want to give Turk some time to introduce what he thinks about the topic, since he's
Yeah,
been
so-
very generous to be a replacement here.
So I was part of last week's panel, left because Maddie Cakes is very inconsiderate when it comes to actually having conversations and talking about this stuff. So I've actually heard Jangles being kind and like waiting to talk. And Joe, I respect you a lot as well. So I'm actually interested in having a good conversation. And as my entry point, I want to, what is the tamest version of this type of story time hour? I still have kids trying to get to sleep, because when I see examples that are being plastered over media, it's definitely more in this anime realm where certain aspects are being elevated, accentuated, and all that stuff. Is there like a grandma that does story hour? And
Dylan has a good link. Dylan, do you have that link you can post that you've been showing on your stream when you debate people in the group Discord?
I can post it in there if you want. I don't know if this abides by the rules, me providing sources. Turk, would you want me to post it?
I would provide. I
Holy
just don't have the
shit.
link.
I just had a brilliant fucking idea.
Okay, I'll post it in the thing.
Because
Why
what
are
we're
we
talking
not-
about here is more of like what's socially acceptable. And from my opinion, that type of event is not deemed socially acceptable, and we're trying to hash that out in a constructive manner, and I think that's good discourse to have. Whereas if we talk about anime story hour, anime or dressing up in that side of outfit, that's more socially acceptable. So it's like we're on that cusp. It's like we need to define what is currently acceptable and what's not acceptable, and then try and come to some sort of middle ground as to what we can.
Yeah,
We can't just interrupt
I think this is why we need to clarify what is inherent to drag, right? Just in the same way that we can clarify what's inherent to cosplay, and we can acknowledge that there's probably kid-appropriate ways to do cosplay and cosplay performances that wouldn't be considered grooming or sexual in nature.
Yeah, I
right?
think
and
we
that's trying
agree
to
on
establish
that.
that same point for drag.
This is what we do. Right? We get all the people that want to get involved, right? We get all those people, get them dressed up in whatever outfits that they're going to do. Make sure that they're kid appropriate, right? We want to say that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to the nursing homes, right? And find all of these old grandmas that got no fucking kids to read to. And we're going to take them to the fucking schools, right? Via chariots. And these people dressed up in cosplay, right? And get these grandmas back a part of society, reading the storybooks to children, because that's ultimately how you bring society all the way back around. We want the grandmas reading the stories, and we want the other people to not be focused on themselves, right? To start to focus on other people and helping them. And then ultimately, we're all going to be able to grow together as a nice collective society.
Do you think drag queens want to read stories to kids, especially in Drag Queen Story Hour, which typically features diverse families? Why do you think they want to do that?
Why do I think
push
that they
their
want to do that?
agenda, Jangles, to corrupt the youth?
I would agree. I wish that agenda had been pushed on me. I was without that agenda for 18 years.
Just because you're a little bit more willing to accept things, right?
No.
As they're
No,
coming
I
in the
want that
back door
agenda.
than others, right? Doesn't mean that everyone wants to have an entrance into the back door. You know what I mean?
I don't know, and I wouldn't push that on other people. But you know what would have been really
Look, he
fucking nice
agrees
when I was
it's
growing up
political,
in rural
ultimately.
Kentucky, where my cousin said that all F slurs should be rounded up and shot, or my entire family half my family disowned me, or like my mom and dad sat me down and fucking cried when I came out to them at the age of 26. You know what I would have really loved to have is just one instance in my local community of a queer positive story hour where it's just you're normal. Different families are going to exist. You're going to be fine. You're not an abomination. You're not a freak. You're not a
He's
fucking
definitely
degenerate.
practiced that.
You're normal. You're accepted. You will be loved. That would have been fucking incredible. That would have been great. Y'all would have said it was grooming. That's what I'm pissed about.
I just want to make the point. I think there is a lot of sexual trauma towards children, and I just think drag queens, being exposed to sex, that can be a form of sexual trauma towards a child. But there can be drag queens that are not sexual. So, I mean, I guess it's a little nuanced and not as black and white as people want to
So
make.
yeah, then can I make sure that there's no disagreement? We all agree there's ways to do drag that is appropriate for kids. The only thing that we would disagree on are instances that we're looking at and shit like that. And
Well, I'd
we
like
do
the
all-
clarification that majority of drag shows are tipping and simulating like being at a strip club. At least the drag brunches and stuff that I've seen in shows like RuPaul's Drag Race, I think are overtly sexual.
I'll say that
I
it
would
comes
say
from the
majority.
nightlife scene. I don't know that it comes
Which
from
is
like a
pretty sexual,
stripper scene,
yeah.
but like burlesque, like nightlife shows, sure. Like I'll agree to that. But I just want to make sure, because then if that's the case, we don't really have a problem with drag itself, right? We have a problem with
I don't.
instances.
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't have any problem with drag. You going to do drag? That's fine. I just don't think it
Did
should
you
be
say
drag.
that
Right. So
majority
the
of
actual
dancing-
problem, though, here is that you have these parents who, like Jingles, want to expose their children to diversity, but in doing that, they're willing to also expose their children to inappropriate sexual conduct. So the problem here is that they have this value, and they're allowing that value to override common sense in some cases, where they're bringing them to sexual environments that they really shouldn't be, and which frankly are not appropriate or good ways to expose them to this kind of diversity. So
Right, but
that's the
no.
criticism.
I'm really like. I
Wait, you
appreciate
gotta let her finish though.
No, I'm finished. I'll let Jingles go.
Okay,
and we
now
can
you
go back
finish.
and
Okay,
forth.
just
Yeah,
making
so-
sure.
Yeah, Todd, I appreciate that you're engaging in good faith, but we haven't established that it's sexual. This is like the tautology, like drag is sexual because it's sexual.
Yeah, no. I'm not
We
saying
haven't
all
established that.
cases. I'm just saying there are certain cases which have become prominent, and they're examples of probably inappropriate behavior. So when you have like a young boy and you're having him like twerk for all of these men, and you're like giving him dollar bills, probably not an appropriate way to introduce children to the idea that they can be gender nonconforming. So that's the criticism that conservatives are having. They're saying that there's an inappropriate way to do this, and it's being done inappropriate in these cases.
I genuinely appreciate that you're trying to paint the best possible, like stealing an argument from that. I genuinely appreciate it, but that's not their argument. Their argument isn't that individual cases.
That's my argument, okay?
I know.
So just
and I
engage with
appreciate
me.
That. I know. I appreciate that. But you also said that the majority of conservatives are focused on these individuals.
Well, we
and
can
that's
ask
not-
Conspiracy Castle on CTV and the Turk. Are you guys saying that like drag is always wrong, or are you saying that there are these instances which are inappropriate ways of showing people diversity and gender nonconforming behavior? What are you saying?
I feel like the language that the left is choosing to use is just not the right language to be using for what's happening, right? In the instances where you have a Mrs. Doubtfire dressed up like a grandma reading fucking stories to kids, right? If you say drag, you imply sex and gender in as a part of it. If you say it's cosplay, it could be anything. It could be anime.
We just
it could be a
agreed that drag
character.
doesn't always mean sex, right? We
Okay, but it does imply that.
gendered
You
cosplay.
can't-
In a way,
you
in a
can-
way, it does.
Well, now
Wait,
it feels like
but
we're
hold
going
on.
back
So
and
now we're
You can
somewhere
say-
different.
You
Like,
can
so-
say no. You can say that's why I read the definition, right? So you can say something different, but Merriam-Webster, which is like here's a dictionary, we're all going to use it, right? This is the gender is a part of the very definition, right? So like, there's no way you get away from that.
Okay, but
So what
gender
you
doesn't
need to
mean
do-
sex.
Get away from the fact
Yeah.
that it's gender's not
CTV.
sex.
I made a
CTV.
joke that I didn't have gender with you, or you didn't have gender with my mom last night. That was kind of a joke, but it was also a real thing. Gender is not sex. And like your accusation is that it's sexual. That implies
The act of
Because
sex, yeah.
the act
Well,
that
you
people
would
are
need to
doing,
know.
like we went all the way through all of this, right? So like
Yeah.
we're back at the square root of the language that the left is choosing to describe this thing needs to change so that it actually conveys the message that it wants to send to people, rather than trying to tell everybody else that understands drag as the sexual, all of these sexual acts that go along with it, which it does in the majority of fucking cases. You need to nuance your language and associate the Mrs. Doubtfire fucking hour, right?
No,
or whatever
then
it is
you
you
need
want
to
to
clarify
call
your
it.
In the
language.
definition
Wait.
you read, though, CTV, that is
No.
allowed. The Mrs. Doubtfire interpretation is a valid interpretation of drag based on the definition you gave.
Oh, wait.
Yeah,
I want to
it
make sure.
is.
Alex was trying to say something earlier. I want to make sure he gets to say something. And James, I saw you raise your hand a while ago. Did you still want to talk in a little bit? Okay, so Alex, and we'll see if we can bring it over to James at some point. Oh, and Turk, write your name down.
Well, I think gender is inherently sexual because you choose which gender you want to have sex with, and so I would think that LGBTQIA, when you use that term, you're defining which gender you want to have sex with. It's not that's how you that's what you use to describe it.
Oh no! If gender
Yeah,
is inherently sexual, does having a
Yeah.
girls section in Walmart sexualize children with little pink dresses for
That's not
3-year-olds?
what he's
Does that
saying. He's
sexualize?
saying- no,
If
he's saying-
gender is
I'm saying-
inherently
I'm saying
sexual,
I'm saying if you're a homosexual, you want to have sex with a male. If you're a
Do you
male
think that
homosexual,
gender-
you wanna
the
have sex
only
with a
context
male
that
Let him,
gender
wait,
matters to people who are
wait. Okay, please, 1 second. I can't hear what Alex is saying because you're talking over him. It's Alex?
I'm saying if you're a male homosexual, that means you want to have sex with the male gender, correct?
I'm very lost here, Alex. So to ask a clarifying question, maybe this is where we're losing you. I'm trying very hard here. Do you believe that there is a difference between gender and sexual orientation.
I think there is, but I think gender is a huge part of sex because if you're a homosexual male, you want to have sex with the male gender. You don't want to have sex with the female gender, correct?
You
So
said
gender
clearly,
can define who you want to have sex with. So it's
you,
inherently sexual.
You said clearly that gender is inherently sexual. So I'll ask you this: if Jangles has a son,
Yes.
and that son is a boy, and they identify as male, what is sexual about that?
It would be who does the little boy want to have sex with? Does he want to have sex with female
Well, that's
gender or
sexuality,
male
not
gender?
gender.
But I'm saying you
Ew.
have to pick a gender that you want to have sex with. Do you see what I'm
I'm
saying?
speechless.
Okay, hold on.
Wait, so
You guys
to
not understand
clarify,
what I'm saying?
wait, just hang on.
Wait,
One more.
I'm
Wait,
saying,
wait,
if
one
you're a
second.
homosexual, if you're a homosexual, you want to have sex with a male. So
I want
wouldn't
to
you
ask a
describe
really
male
basic
as your
question,
gender?
Alex. What does inherently
What is
mean
this
to you?
argument?
What does inherently mean to you, Alex?
I don't know how y'all don't understand what he's saying. I understand exactly
No,
what you're
it's
saying,
like-
Alex.
I
it
just
doesn't
wanted
make
to
any
know.
sense.
Wait. Okay.
I feel like we have two
Since
different definitions.
Wait. Okay. If there's confusion around what Alex is saying, I'm gonna give Alex some time to respond to it. And the first person who gets first dibs is like explain what he's saying. Then the first person gets dibs is James because he's been waiting so long. And Turk, I still remember you, buddy. I'm sorry, just so confusing.
Look, gender is a fundamental description of who you want to have sex with. If you're a gay homosexual
No, it's
male, you want to
not.
have sex
It's
with
not.
other men. So
It's
gender
not.
is important in assigning who you want to have sex with. So in that process, gender is sexual. If I'm as a heterosexual male, I want to have sex with a female gender.
Oh my
That is
God, this
important.
logic
That
Just
is
because
so
it has a
I wanna have
bad.
sex
component of
with.
something doesn't mean that it is something.
It's a huge component of it, is what I would
Doesn't
argue.
mean
So
that
then,
it is it
Alex,
regardless.
just so then,
My
just so I'm
heart
clear
is a huge
here.
component
One
of my
second.
blood system.
I
But that
said-
doesn't mean my heart is my blood
Sorry.
system.
You're
I
right.
said
couldn't live
James.
without
Wait.
your heart.
I said James would get first dibs. James.
I'm just trying to figure out why Primetime 99 is over here trying to have a deep conversation about who kids are deciding they want to have sex with. You're
You're using the
literally
kids analogy. I'm not
I
using
didn't.
kids.
Hey,
I don't
excuse me
wanna
for
talk about kids
talking.
having sex.
Excuse me
You're
for
the one
talking
that
while
used
you're
that
interrupting,
analogy.
Alex.
Well, I
Excuse me
gotta
for
say, you're-
talking
okay,
while
okay,
you're
okay,
interrupting,
okay,
Alex.
Makes his point.
Okay,
No,
wait.
Alex. No, you
Wait,
don't,
wait,
Alex.
The example
wait.
of
No,
James' kid.
you
I
don't.
didn't make
Okay,
that,
stop.
James.
No,
Let's
yes,
bring
you
it down.
did.
I didn't talk
Bring it
about
down.
Yes, you did.
Bring it
the
down.
example of James.
Yes, you
Dylan
did.
cannot scream.
Yes, you
Dylan
In
did.
the
cannot scream.
description, James,
Cannot.
you're being
Okay, wait.
ingenuine. You're being
Okay, wait.
No, I'm
disingenuous.
not.
In the
Oh,
description,
no, I'm not.
Wait, please,
the example,
please,
you said
please,
Jangles-
please, Alex, Ali Boy 99, Primetime 99, Tucker Carlson's #1 guest. Please. Okay,
Number
I can't
one.
scream. Number one, I can't scream because other people are sleeping. It's like 4:30 a.m. over here. Okay, so I want James to finish his question. Don't worry, Alex. I'll let you be able to clear up any misconceptions about whatever he's saying about your point after. Okay, and then I do want to bring it over to Turk. Joe, I saw you. Put your name down.
Okay, Alex literally made multiple references to if you're a boy and you're determining sex by gender of who you want to have sex with. You're literally sexualizing boys and girls in your quest to saying you shouldn't bring boys and girls to drag shows because it sexualizes them. And correct me if I'm wrong, the people who sexualize children are called answer number one on the board. Where's Rob Noor? This is his line. I feel like I'm stealing it. Never mind, you know what I'm saying.
Guys, I was
What
using
is
the
he saying?
example of
Conservatives?
Jangles. You guys said the exact example. I think it was Joe
Groomers?
that might have said the example of if Jangle had a son. That's what I was talking about. I was just using the example that was given to me. I don't want to
Catholics?
talk about, you're trying to entrap me. I don't want to sexualize kids at all. I was using the example that you were using, James. So let's be in
I
let's be
didn't
based
use
in
the
reality.
example.
Well, Joe
I
used
can-
it. Joe, did you use that example when talking about Jangle's kids? Yes or no?
I don't think you answered the question. I can re-answer.
Did
I can
you bring
re-ask
up
it.
Jangle's kids? I'm asking. Did you bring
I-
up the
I
example?
tried-
Did you say?
I
Yes,
used
not
the
me.
word. Yes.
So I use your example, bud. So the retard down here below me is trying to say that I did something. You're literally retarded,
we gonna do this?
bud. Well, yeah,
Are we
because
gonna
he's
do
an
this?
idiot. Because I didn't say that, Joe. You said that, and he's not blaming you for bringing up
Alex.
Jangle's kids. He's trying to lay that on me. It had
Oh, we're
nothing
talking
to do
about
with
my
me.
kids now.
I'm dealing with some retarded idiot below me that I don't
Alex,
like. because
Alex,
you're
do
so,
this,
buddy.
You're so
Are we gonna do this?
stupid. You
Chill.
don't even know what Joe just said. because
He's
you're
getting
dumb.
so angry.
I said I didn't
You're
say
just
it.
retarded. and
I said
stupid.
I didn't say it. I said I didn't say it. Don't
Alex
say off
said
the
it,
word.
not
He
me.
dropped-
I
he
was
dropped
using his
four.
example,
Four.
bud. I was using his example. I was answering his question. It wasn't my analogy. It was his analogy, but you're too stupid to realize that.
I just
If you
think
say-
that if we
Alex,
set the
if you say
stand,
the R word one more time, you get a free Slurpee. That's for 5. Okay, you only hit 4. Okay. So, okay, Joe, I'll let you go, but I really want to bring it over to Turk, okay? Because
Okay.
Turk has been waiting very patiently.
so I'll remove the hypothetical to make sure this is a little bit simpler. Do you believe that gender is a fundamental descriptor to determine sexual orientation? Alex,
Yes,
I
because
don't
how would
think
I
this
know?
is a
How
good
would I
line of
know who I want to have
questioning.
sex with if I can't define their gender?
if I am a lesbian, who am I attracted to?
Other women, female.
I'm a man.
Are you a homosexual man or heterosexual man?
I am a male lesbian. Who am I attracted to?
There's no such thing as a male lesbian.
Why?
Because lesbian is a term used for women that are attracted
What
to
is
the
this?
same sex.
How do
What
we
is this
know that lesbian isn't
conversation?
used for men?
Dude, are you
What
kidding,
is
bud? Is this
going-
really your argument that you're trying to say
I'm
lesbian
asking
is...
you because you said that gender.
Why?
Is a
No,
fun-
because-
you agreed that gender is a fundamental descriptor to determine
If you're
sexual
trying to play
orientation.
some sort of logic game and say you're a male lesbian, that doesn't exist. That's not
No,
a thing.
but-
A
no, no, no,
lesbian
no,
is a
no,
woman that is attracted to other women. If you're
Do
not
you-
smart enough to know that, then what's even the point of talking to you about this subject? Because
So-
you don't even know
so-
what a lesbian is.
No, but you said
What's a lesbian, Joe? Then you tell me what a lesbian is if you're so smart. No, you
I'm
tell
not-
me. I'd like to know. No, you're so smart. You have
How
a
did
logic
Joe
game. Why
make
don't
it
you describe what a
worse?
lesbian
Okay,
is
Alex, at
so
this
the
point, you're
group
just
can have it.
talking.
Yeah, Joe, what's a
endlessly.
lesbian? What's a
What's
lesbian, Joe?
What do you, I'm talking. I'm just trying to debunk all the weird stuff that
Yeah,
he's
you've
saying.
asked the same
A
question
lesbian is a
How did he
female
make it
attracted to another
worse?
female. I'd like Joe to
You've
answer what a
answered it 3
lesbian is.
times and you've asked it 5 times. Jesus.
May I
Christ.
lesbian.
request Alex to be muted so I can answer his question fully without interruption?
Okay, I know you cannot be moved, but I'm going to ask Joe Lewis to not be interrupted, please. And then I want to move it over to Turk because Turk has been waiting. We got Turk, we got Taft, and we've got Jangles on the list.
Ooh,
Gotcha.
fuck
So
yeah.
to make sure that my question was clear to you, I asked you that is gender a fundamental descriptor to determine sexual orientation?
What's a tip?
You said yes.
So true.
I asked you that I'm a lesbian. What am I? And it appears like, based on your answer, that you don't need gender to be a fundamental descriptor to determine sexual orientation. That's what
No.
it sounds like to me.
No, because gender is included in the definition of lesbian.
Alex, if you wanted to respond to that, you could.
Yeah, I would like to respond. Can you tell me what a lesbian is?
Without including gender in your description?
Okay.
You
We
can't?
can.
You can't answer what a lesbian is, dude.
No, I
that
didn't-
just shows you how smart you are. Not very. You can't even define what a lesbian
I guess
is.
I can't get notifications and wait till them to pass. I'm trying
Okay.
to. So you were asking me, is it
What's a
possible?
lesbian, bud? Answer the question. Can you define it? I don't
yeah,
think
sure,
you
we can-
can.
Why do you
Alex's
think
point, which is not a good point, is that you can't define sexuality without an understanding of gender, right? So when you say, what is a lesbian? And he says that in order to be a lesbian, you need to be a woman. That's to his point, because his definition of lesbian includes a description of gender. I'm going to critique that point when it gets to me, but like, I don't know what your line of questioning is here, because it's
Right,
not
because-
actually
Joe
getting
Lewis,
to it.
Right, because
Joe-
I wasn't complete with it, and I would love to complete these things with people answering questions initially. So if I were to say that I'm gay, who do you believe me to be attracted to?
Male gender, because you're a male.
I define lesbian as a gay woman. Is that wrong?
A gay woman would mean that you would be homosexual. You would like to be with the same sex, the same gender that you are. You're attracted to the same gender as you are.
So if I say I'm gay, I'm attracted to a man. But if somebody says that they are a gay woman, that means they are attracted to
Female.
What?
Okay.
Okay, Turk.
What an
I
insightful
don't honestly know how to
insight.
kind of pivot back to the drag question because there was a there was a question of like where do certain conservatives stand when it comes to what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, and I believe that people, grown adults, are allowed to go and do that activity that they want. They can do it in places that are deemed socially acceptable, and I think that's the more pressing question to talk about and discuss tonight. The problem I have is if we're going to do that type of book story hour at a public library, we're now allocating a space publicly funded by the society that some societies might deem that as not acceptable. Whereas if we were to do anime story hour in that same location, society might deem that as acceptable, and it could be okay. So I think is the better definition and argument that we can go across, because in a private domicile, it's like, yes, a private parent can bring their child to that event just as much as I would love to bring my child to a skeet shoot or bring my child to a a deer hang, go gut a deer or something.
Earlier in the discussion, it feels like we said the only reason that people wouldn't want to bring kids to a drag story hour over an anime story hour was because of their perceptions of what drag is, not necessarily what the act itself
No,
is.
I did not agree to that.
It's not necessarily, and we can, I guess, circle back to that if we need to now, but we're just going back to CTV's earlier point of changing the name, but not the act.
Back.
Say it again, CTV?
He said circle back.
I did, yes. Anyways, changing the name, not the act, is the issue there. It's the optics. It's not the actual act itself.
No.
So it's not the drag itself.
This is part of the act itself because they're dressing up into a certain character in order to go and do an act. So that's part of the act. If they were going to just go and read, they would not need to be dressing in a particular set of attire to do
why would anime story hour be okay, but drag story hour not?
Because society has deemed anime dressing up like that in certain instances as acceptable. You know, and then it's like the grades of drag we can discuss. Like, Mrs. Doubtfire might be acceptable to some communities.
Right. So the problem isn't the act; it's the perceptions, right?
Yeah, it's
everything is always everything always comes down to perception.
No,
no.
The problem is the act when it's sexual.
Just really quickly say the only reason that I care about that part is because we're not saying there's something intrinsic to the act itself that is wrong, and if that's the case, then doing drag in the way that we would see somebody do like anime cosplay or akin to it would be fine.
Well, drag is considered a performance, right? So going in drag to a story hour is the performance, and some people might not accept that as being acceptable in a public
right. But it's not because
but
of
who
the act itself.
Cares? Who cares what people think? People can think things that are wrong. People can think things are good. No, okay. So then actually make an argument. Don't just like defer the responsibility of making an argument to be like, well, some people might think it's bad. If you think it's bad, prove that it's bad. And I can prove that certain acts of like children being involved with drag are bad. When the drag is like explicitly sexual and is explicitly involving the child, I don't think that's appropriate. So we discussed some of these examples earlier. I think those examples are bad for the act themselves, not because they're called drag, but because sexualizing children, having a child twerk in front of you and paying him like dollar bills to do so, that's sexual and that's inappropriate. And it's inappropriate whether you call it drag or bungus or whatever, right? So it is the act in that case. I just want to go to Alex's point really quickly as well. Gender and discussing gender is not inherently sexual. Just like discussing gender or playing with gender is not inherently sexual. In fact, like you could show someone like a diagram, I think, of genitalia, and I don't think that would be inherently sexual. So much of it is dependent on the context in which it's brought up. So there's sexual ways to talk about gender, and there's non-sexual ways to talk about gender. But when you model, for example, gender roles to a child, when you say to a child, it's the man's responsibility to take care of the house, to set, his world in order, to take care of his woman, to pay for her things, and to support his family, that's a discussion of gender, but it's not a sexual one. So I think that you as a conservative should be able to see that there are ways to navigate discussions of gender or, portrayals of gender that aren't sexual, but they can also be sexual sometimes. And drag is a good example where oftentimes people have already agreed in this discussion, usually drag is sexual. It's started as an adult art form in nightclubs, and it's highly involved with lots of sexual dancing, lots of, risque outfits, because it's a kind of self-expression of taboo subjects in society. So of course it's going to be associated with sexuality. That's why it's often inappropriate to bring children to them, but not always. Again, not always, not inherently, but oftentimes.
Yeah, performances involving a sexual aspect can be a thing, but just in the same way that they can involve other aspects. When I say that, like, I agree that it's like a part of nightclub culture, I'm specifically not saying that it's like sexual, because I don't think going to a nightclub is in itself sexual.
Do you think a child should go to a nightclub?
Whoa! Come on, Rhizome. Come on, bro.
I've seen
Hold on.
children at nightclubs all
Look,
the time.
hold on, no, no,
But
hold
it's
on,
DJ
hold on.
not-
private event, and main event.
Whoa,
When you
whoa,
defend
whoa.
it.
Exactly.
Hold on,
I
gotta call bullshit.
Yeah, I
okay?
can't wait,
You know,
Feather Chip,
Nike-
until someone
Nike-
restates
they
it.
go to the club
And then
to dance,
CTV is like,
probably because
great
they're
point.
getting warmed up to be able to cap off the fucking night. The hell are you talking about?
What kind of dancing goes
As
on
a
at those types
DJ,
of
as a
nightclubs?
DJ that does private events, and as DJ that does nightclubs, I reject this assertion that you guys believe that nightclubs are inherently sexual. There's a ridiculous claim to make, but it's okay. I'll have the DJ.
I'd like to
sponsor.
address something that Toph said. Again, Toph, the actual voice that I'm glad is here.
Sure.
So yeah, a lot of things you said were incredible, but you also kind of acknowledged factually that gender is different than sex. And I am going to make the argument that the core tenet of drag is an expression, a performance of gender. And if we both agree that gender is separate from sex, it's very easy to make a form of drag that is just about an expression of gender without sexuality. Of course, sexuality can be a component of it. It can be an important component of it. And depending on the age, like you can change the sliders of how sexual it is for to be age appropriate. So all of us agree that is a thing. For Alex, the reason, the core of that whole kerfuffle that we got into is that you said gender is inherently sexual, which led to the very reasonable follow-up question. Well, do kids have genders? Do like boys and girls sections at Walmart? Is that sexualized? Because that's gendered. That's why we kind of were memeing on you for a little bit.
No, Jangles, describe to me who you like to have sex with without using gender.
This doesn't make it inherent.
Okay, so
I'm
you know
asking
how
you a question. Describe who you like to have sex with without using gender.
Okay, I like to have sex with one man. Now you know how a square.
You just said man,
is
gender.
Yeah, I know. Do you know how like a
So
square?
What is Alex's
Hold on,
argument?
do you know how like
Does
a
he think
square
that saying man
is a
is
rectangle?
sexual?
But a rectangle doesn't have to be a
describe who you wanna have
square.
sex
So
with.
when you're describing
Pick part of
sexuality, you do have to use gender. But here's the weird part. I don't know why you're so confident.
I mean, how disingenuous can you be if you
Okay,
admit you
That's
have
not
used
what
Oh, hold on,
inherent
okay.
means, Alex.
Alex, are your dogs boys or girls?
My dog's a girl.
You want to fuck them?
No, I don't want to have
Are you
sex.
describing who you want to fuck? You
I
like to fuck
have sex with
girls?
Girls, humans. See, you're comparing apples and oranges, but my girl dog does like to have sex with male dogs to breed. Do you see?
All
how
right,
that
you
is?
sexualized your
If
dogs.
I-
Fantastic.
No, I'm saying if
Jesus
I
Christ.
wanted to breed my
Can you-
dog, if I wanted to, no, this is why. If I wanted to breed my dog, I would have to have a female dog and a male dog. So gender would matter in that example, bud. So once again,
Dude,
you're debunked. You
dude,
can't even
can you
describe who
have-
wanna
Smoke it
sex
up.
with. You can't even describe who you want to have sex with without using gender.
Of
So
course I
there you
can't.
go.
What do
So
you think the
factually,
argument
you're
is?
wrong.
Dude, can you describe like the
gender
gender
is
of a
sexual.
2-year-old without
Gender-
sexualizing them? Is that possible?
So wait, I could just give an example
What
really
is
quick.
your
I was
obsession
just
with
wondering.
Wait.
I
The
just
question
said-
was directed towards Alex, so I do want to give him an opportunity to respond.
I'm saying who you have a sexual attraction to. If you're talking about kids, they shouldn't have a sexual attraction until they're of age. But I'm talking about who you're sexually attracted to. You cannot define who you're sexually attracted to without using gender. That's
What if you
common
want to
sense.
fuck everybody? Does personhood become sexual?
If you're a pansexual, yeah. 'cause that
Yeah,
means
like if
everybody.
you
That means
if you want to fuck
all
everybody
genders.
and you have no
Means you
gender
wanna have sex-
preference,
That
does
means you wanna
that
have sex with
does
all
that
genders.
make being human inherently sexual at that point because there's a sexuality that uses it in its definition?
If you want to have sex with other humans, yes. But if you're some weirdo that wants to have sex with trees or something like that, I mean, I guess you could argue necrophilia, or but I do think gender
So-
is a huge part of sex.
Necrophilia
because
is
you
dead
have
Yeah,
to
what I
know-
would say
you
where I
have to
differ from
know-
you, Alex, is I think
necrophilia is a
that
dead body, whatever.
what I think where I differ from you is that we use that quality of humanity in the definition of pansexuality, but it's not inherent to. It doesn't have to become sexual because it's used in the definition of something.
Then what
Same
does
with like
pansexual mean then? What does pansexual mean if it's not a sexual term?
no, it is a sexual term, but the things that are used in the definition don't become inherently sexual.
It's sexual because it's a description of how people engage with sex, not because it has a gendered term within it. So we use gendered terms for lots of non-sexual discussions, which indicates to us, indicates.
Just like there can be a drag show that's not sexual, but you cannot have sex. You cannot have a whatever your sexual proclivity without using gender. Jangles
I
cannot
genuinely don't
describe-
understand how you're not getting this. I
Look,
genuinely
don't
don't understand.
describe
Look,
who you
hold
want to
on,
have
I
sex
just-
with without stating the person's gender.
But the
So if
gender
you-
part isn't the part that makes
I
it
just wanna
sexual,
know when
right?
we started
You
talking
have to
about
have the
breakfast.
gender part to know who you want to have sex with as a definition.
Yes, 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 yes. But that's not the part that makes the definition sexual, right?
Why
The-
did some of y'all start talking about breakfast though?
We're gonna let Tab finish.
Hands,
quickly.
probably.
Oh, pansexual.
Yeah, the reason why these definitions are sexual and related to sexual topics is because they are describing sexual relationships, right? Not because they have a gender term within their definition. Because there's lots of gendered terms within lots of different definitions that aren't sexual. And there's lots of ways to use like gendered language without being sexual. You know this, of course, like I don't think that you really believe that like using the word boy or man is always sexual. I don't think you believe that.
I agree with it. It's not always sexual. But let's
Yeah.
talk about pride. What are you proud of? You're proud of who your sexual orientation is, correct?
Usually, yeah, or your gender identity.
Yes. So wouldn't that inherently mean that you have to have gender in order to know who you're sexually attracted to? So don't you think gender plays a big
It's a
part in
component
sexuality?
part of
A
sexuality,
big
yes.
component, correct?
But it's
A
not
big
the part that makes it sexual.
Yeah.
Like for
Alex.
example, Alex,
Sure.
if I say that like all chairs like have legs, right? That doesn't mean that all legs are now part of chairs. Does that make sense?
I understand the nuance of that, but you guys are trying to compare apples and oranges. You
All right, this
cannot
this
use
thing-
gender without describing who you want to have sex
Okay,
with.
this whole thing
That's
started
why
with
in
this
that
question that never got
example-
answered. All
Let
right,
him finish.
Go
I just
ahead.
wanted
Alex.
Alex to finish. Yeah.
okay, Alex. What started this whole thing? You made the claim that gender is inherently sexual, and I asked the question: is having a boys and girls section of clothing at Walmart sexualizing those kids? Because if gender is
Not
inherently
necessarily, but
sexual,
it's separating
no.
the clothes based on sex.
is it sexualizing them? Would
Well,
you
I
feel
mean, some
comfortable
dresses
saying
for
that
young kids could be sexualized? Yeah, there's clothes. At
is it
Walmart that's
inherently sexual?
inappropriate.
The fact that there's because gender is inherently sexual, which is what you said. A boys and girls clothing section at Walmart is inherently sexualizing
You can't
children.
have sex. You can't have sex without gender. So that's why it's a big.
All right,
component.
can you answer? Okay,
You
answer the
can't
question.
engage.
Is
You
having
can't
a
engage.
gendered section in Walmart sexualizing kids? There's our easy answer. The answer is no.
Yeah, yes, it is. No, it is because you're separating by sex. You're saying
You're
one is
sexualizing
the
them.
male section.
That's
and
what you
one
mean
is
by
the female.
sexualizing.
Wait,
I think it's
what?
possible that it
Okay,
could be
I'm done.
sexualized.
Alex, I have a question. I'm like, and I'm being honest here, being real with you here right now. I'm not trying to drag you
Been
across
honest one
coals.
time, Joe, but go ahead. You can't even decide what
I
a lesbian
mean,
is. You haven't been honest.
I did. I
What's
said
a
a lesbian
lesbian
is
then? If you're so honest, what's a lesbian?
a gay woman.
Okay, so who is she attracted to?
A gay woman is attracted to
Oh
a
my
woman.
god.
Okay, so what is a woman a gender?
Woman's gender, yes.
So do you need gender to define who you are sexually attracted to?
You need the qualifier of gay to signify where that
You
direction
need
goes.
a qualifier of their gender to know who you're.
I
having
need
sex
gay, which is a sexual orientation. And if I say if someone is gay, that's a sexual orientation. And I say woman, that's a gender. Those two together make it so that a gay
with.
woman
You're trying
is
to say
attracted
that
to a
gender
woman.
and sex have no relation whatsoever, and I disagree with you. And so
No,
we're
You
just
said
going
you
in
said
circles.
that gender is
not.
inherently sexual. So my question to you
Gender,
is
you have
because
to have gender in order to describe who you want to have sex with.
This is why I asked you
I-
what inherently means to you. It seems like you're operating on a different definition of inherent
So-
than the rest of us.
How does he
Yeah,
not
what do you
understand
mean?
this?
I mean,
How does he
Inherent is
not
intrinsic to you
understand
that you cannot
this?
have it without.
How?
Yes, you cannot have a sexual orientation without knowing the gender you're attracted to.
But the
But
gender
you can
isn't.
have
The gender doesn't
Alex,
make it
Alex,
have
sexual.
something that is sexualized
I-
or a sexual
That's
component.
possible, but I'm
I
saying
didn't
you
wanna
cannot
go
have,
here.
If that's
you cannot
possible,
have-
that's all we're saying. Hey, if that's
I
you
possible,
can't have
that's
a
all we're
sexual
saying.
identity
Yeah,
without
okay.
knowing what gender you're attracted
You just
to.
admitted it's
Alex-
possible, so that's all. That was it.
Yeah.
That was it.
Do you
basically.
understand
Yeah.
my point? You cannot know who you're sexually attracted to without using gender. Do you guys
right,
agree on that?
but no, Alex. So let me ask you this. I'm saying this genuinely.
Yes,
I'm
we agree on that.
I'm demisexual. Who am I
Oh,
attracted
sure.
to?
Yeah, actually, yeah, there are different
You're
ways. Yeah,
attracted
true,
to the
true, true,
male
true, true.
and female sex. So you're
No,
attracted to
I'm
both
attracted.
genders.
I'm attracted to somebody who I feel that I can have a close bond with. That is somebody who I am attracted to. That is definitively who I am. I am demisexual. So who am I
But
attracted to?
demisexual means you're not attracted to any genders whatsoever.
I am attracted to people.
Means he's attracted
who-
to both in different circumstances.
Okay, so you would need gender to describe who you're sexually attracted to.
What is required for Joe to be interested in somebody is
Explain
a
what
good
a
connection.
demisexual is, because I don't know. I'm not familiar. What's a
A
demisexual?
good relationship. The relationship precedes the relationship. Sorry, the friendship or the connection or
The connection I
history.
have supersedes the gender.
It's like partially
So do you have
asexual, so
sex?
the romance is more
Oh,
important.
you're asexual, so you don't have sex.
No.
So there you
No,
go.
I'm not asexual. I'm demisexual.
It's like halfway, so demi is like half. So basically, he's saying that like the romantic aspect is more important than the sexual aspect for him.
And for me, and
Alex,
to
it's like if
extrapolate
you
that
and I are
farther,
hanging out having a glass of wine in our bathrobes, and I start looking over to you, and I'm like, we both like animals. We both like sitting by the fireplace. I'm kind of digging Alex, right? We have like a prior connection already. That's what it requires for Joe to get into somebody, not just like, oh, this is like a hot dude or a hot girl or something.
and just to
You're
be
sexually
clear, and
attracted
just
to
to
all
be
your friends, Joe.
no, I'm attracted to my girlfriend. But
You have
I'm
a
still,
girlfriend.
yes,
Well, how do you describe her as a girl? As by her gender?
she's my girlfriend.
I'm
How
just
have
saying
we,
use
how have
gender
we
as
been
the
stuck on
first
this for 30
term.
minutes?
I'm just saying using
How?
gender as the first descriptor of the person.
Because
that
y'all
you're
won't go
sexually
back to the
attracted
original topic.
But
and
all
we
of a
keep
sudden now
jumping
you're
out.
saying you're a demisexual, yet you have a girlfriend. So I mean, go
Yeah.
figure, bud. I think
Yeah,
you're
let's
a little-
just go back to the original
Okay,
topic.
so the
Let's
question
move
I
on.
wanted to ask you, Alex, because specifically is if you, hypothetically speaking, you are the head of the library, you're the head librarian, and
Oh
there
my
is
gosh.
a
all these hypotheticals are so stupid. But go ahead. Sorry. Let me let
there is an event on your calendar that says Drag Queen Story Hour. How would you ensure, as the head librarian, that it is appropriate and qualifies under not being sexual? What would you tell the staff who is going to run that Drag Queen Story Hour?
You couldn't show any sort of sexual organs, breast or buttocks. You couldn't
does
read
that-
any sort of material that is sexual inherently and that has any sexual themes. And that's how I guess those are the two things I would cover. Is there'd be, no explicit breast or butt exposure and no sexual themes in the book that they read.
How far is
wanna answer Joe's
explicit?
question.
How far is explicit breast exposure for you?
I'm glad you think I'm the
Cleavage.
most rational.
What?
Turk
Where
wants
is
to
that?
grab this question.
I mean, that's
think
that's
Turk
an
wants to
we
answer
can
it.
take that answer.
I'll
Joe.
take it. I'll
Cleavage,
take it. We'll
yeah.
take it. We can move on.
Joe, if it comes down to setting a standard and what is acceptable, it's definitely got to come down to the community, because you could go to San Francisco in the exact same instance and they would say, go for it, full DRAG, go full blown, go all the way. But if you go somewhere down in East Texas, they're going to say Mrs. Doubtfire plus like additional coverings or something, man. That's why it goes back to my original statement. It's not that drag is bad. It's because where is it acceptable and what level of that is acceptable for being in front of children in a public place.
Okay, fuck yeah. This is actually where this conversation should be. So, you weren't here for my opening statement, but what I said was it is very important to describe acts as sexual because labels. My entire point was that if something is queer, it is inherently seen as sexual, despite the fact that the act itself is not. It would not be seen as sexual in other contexts. So that's why it's very, very important to describe the act rather than the label, because that's what is actually sexual.
And some societies don't deem the act of doing drag and story hour combined as being inappropriate. When you go into other societies, it's entirely inappropriate, and it's based on the society's acceptance of that type of lifestyle in that type of event and presentation. So,
of course,
The
but
trick.
the entire
me in
the entire
conservative Texas, I think most of these forms of drag are not appropriate for children.
okay, but the entire impetus is all right, is kissing someone sexual?
It can be,
Milton.
yes.
Certainly it can be. Are there
Nasty
forms
mental.
of kissing that are appropriate to show?
I want to jump in this and discuss
In
federalism
certain
with
types
this
of
guy.
age
Yeah, there's
groups,
obviously,
yes.
Yeah, you
Hopefully
can
I
see
can
mom
do
and dad
that.
kissing. You can see a couple kissing, but let's take a recent example. Same-sex kiss in Buzz Lightyear was deemed sexual. It was deemed grooming, even because conservatives just want to lie about what grooming means. That was my original point. I normally hate whataboutisms. In this case, it is about finding the variable that someone deems inappropriate or someone deems sexual. So we really have to get to the bottom. It was a great question. At what level? Like, what level are you able to show boobs where it becomes sexual?
Right. And
That's a really good question.
And
That
going
gets
to
at the
Buzz
meat of it.
going to Buzz Lightyear specifically, we're towing into that as a society. Is that acceptable and is it not acceptable? There's many people in the conservative space that don't care. They want to go see Buzz Lightyear because it's a good movie. They look past what happened because it doesn't really impact anything, and it's not a relevant thing. Drag Time Story Hour could be completely relevant to what they're wanting to do with children.
Yeah, but you also understand that like it's the queer that makes it sexual, not the act. And so it's the connotations with queer that people have based on like
I think it
hundreds
definitely
of years of stigma.
enhances the society's stigma towards it. That could be part of it. Yeah,
that is true. But you see how it's disingenuous to describe the exact same act as sexual or non-sexual based on the label that you put upon it. That's why I thought it was really, really weird how the exact same thing, exact same costume of the exact same person reading to children would be deemed sexual if it were called drag, but non-sexual if it were called anime or something. You know, there's actually some crossover between like drag and anime. So that's kind of like what I'm looking at. That's my original accusation, and it seems to be playing out. Like we have to look at the act. What makes something sexual? Everyone agrees that we shouldn't show like explicitly sexual things to kids. We shouldn't like be exposing them to hardcore pornography at a young age. I think all of us would agree that that's
and
harmful.
softcore pornography, all pornography. Make that clarification.
Yeah, whatever. All of us would agree with that. The entire place that this conversation should be is what is sexual, and I will not buy the argument that something the exact same act but queer is more sexual than a non-queer version of that same act. I won't accept that.
And you know what? I'm willing to see. I would really wish we, because I'm a dumb conservative here in Texas. I don't understand all these definitions y'all are flinging out. I would love to see like this timeline or paradigm of like what is acceptable forms of drag. You've got super duper conservative drag, and you've got moderate centrist drag, and then you've got extreme leftist drag.
You got Bugs Bunny drag in the 50s.
I mean, can I
You got Rudy Giuliani drag.
Because like you're asking this question of like, if it's queer, does it inherently become sexual? And I think that with cross-dressing specifically, it is something that a lot of people strongly associate with sexual fetish. And it's because there are people who have a sexual fetish for cross-dressing. So like an analogy would be, is it inherently sexual to wear like a dog mask in public? And the answer is no. Like you can wear a dog mask in public and have it not be sexual. There are ways to do that. But people associate it with sexuality because there are people who like to wear dog masks as part of like puppy play, and that's sexual for them. So I think that's why people, specifically with cross-dressing, end up viewing it as sexual, because they know that there are people out there who have a sexual fetish for cross-dressing, and they're worried that even if it's like relatively innocuous, that it might have some sexual undertone. So I think that's their worry.
They call it cross-dressing though, but not cosplay or dress up.
I think they would, yeah. I think legitimately, like, if you called it cosplay tomorrow, conservatives would still have the same issue.
Yeah, I
want to
think
make sure.
Would you be okay?
So real quick,
would you be
10
sure.
seconds and I'll be quiet. 10 seconds and I'll be quiet. But you do see how like because some people see it as sexual, therefore we shouldn't allow it, is very easily abused. Some people find feet sexual, therefore no sandals, because some people do it for sexual fetish.
But put it on the other shoe. People walking around with guns and stuff due to open carry could be deemed as violent where it's not, and that's a small minority.
But it would be inappropriate, Jangles. I think you would agree if there was like an adult who was like ogling children's feet because they're in sandals, or was getting off by like wearing sandals in public. Now, I agree. I don't think that's something you can legitimately legislate, but like, I think we would agree that like socially, culturally, we should discourage people from engaging in that sort of behavior. So
Alex,
we're getting
them for free. Those are the money makers right there.
We're getting a little bit away from the actual topic, but like,
yes, we are.
I think that is like the heart of the criticism is because this kind of cross-dressing, it's queer, but I don't think that like it's necessarily more sexual because it's queer. I think it's more sexual because it is a sexual fetish for people.
You're basically saying it's more sexual because it's viewed as more sexual.
No, because some people have it as a sexual fetish. Is why it's more sexual.
And you understand why that's not a very
No, I would
argument.
say it's still more sexual because of the actions that end up being displayed as a part of the caricature of drag itself, right?
But like, I would also say
Because-
that like I don't think we
because
should ban cross-dressing or something in public.
Well, I mean, that's
To be
what,
clear.
that's what, yeah, but that's how drag came to be, right? Like, are we not going to acknowledge that? That drag came to be because it was explicitly illegal to dress in clothing of the opposite gender. And on top of that, we were deeply segregated when ball culture was at its peak. So these things came out of necessity from those communities. And it
The
feels like
Shakespeare used to, the actors in Shakespeare would dress up in drag, so it wasn't that
I'm talking
illegal.
about specifically ball culture and the history of drag. That it was
So
explicitly
different
because
cultures, it's been illegal, and certain cultures, it's been legal.
no, that's not necessarily what's being engaged right now.
Ball culture is a specific ball culture, like dance hall ball, like
masquerade ball culture. And what I'm saying is that what we know as drag today came from black and I hate to say it, but black and brown communities, where these were people who were segregated, and these were also people who were subjected to laws that made it impossible for them to express their gender expression. So they used ball culture as an opposition to those two things: the objection to TLDR, to segregation, and the objection to the restrictions to expressing your gender identity.
So the only thing that I'm hearing you say here, Joe, right, is because the balls over here in the Wolfpack chat are associated with the sub badges. If you want to be a part of ball culture, you need to come over to CTV's channel and subscribe. Is that what you just said?
No.
That certainly sounds like what you just said. If you want to be a part of ball culture, you got to have some balls, right?
Actually, quick reminder here, everybody. Just a reminder for the general audience: when you go to sub to CTV, your reminder: CTV voted for and supported Donald Trump, who paraded around with Rudy Giuliani dressed in drag as Giuliani sat on his lap, kissed him, and then married him in a public ceremony. Just a reminder that CTV supports and votes for people who participate in sexual drag performances.
Hey.
CTV, everybody. CTV.
Hey, as
Give it
long
up.
as it's adults, I'm all good with it. Adults can do what they want. It's whatever you.
There were children there. There were children there.
So
there were children there.
Yeah, I want to take James's criticism here as a main sticking point, because it gets brought up in all these contexts. Is like, what is family friendly? If kids are there, is that event deemed family friendly? Because a lot of a bunch of the LA Pride stuff, it was not marketed as family friendly, but families were there. TV shows are not rated for certain things, but kids can watch it. It's like,
yeah, I actually view it exactly as that. Like, I view it as like a parent doesn't know whether or not a TV show is appropriate for their kid and lets them watch it anyways.
And one of the things that's very explicitly clear at events, especially at Pride events, for instance, is making sure that there are things that are very clear that are appropriate for children and for all ages, and then there are things where it's inappropriate, right? So these categories exist. What we do see, however, is parents, sometimes to no fault of their own, maybe being put into situations where a family-friendly space might enter into a non-family friendly space. And this could be communication from staff, this could be a miscommunication from event personnel, and this is a common thing that happens. Like, you can be just casually at a restaurant minding your own business, and then that restaurant could change over to something that is 18 plus. And sometimes what should happen is that you have event staff, people who work at the place, go up there and say, hey, we're actually switching to a private event. Can you please move over to this area? And some people follow that and some people don't.
So if that sort of a scenario happens, because I saw Libs of TikTok post it, there's a restaurant that's out in the outdoors area, and then someone that's dressing in drag like goes through the center of it and is like shaking everything, and like, I don't remember what mannerisms they did. They got handed money by kids and stuff. At that point, would we expect the venue to say, hold up, we got to make sure the kids are approving and accepting of this, or is this now deemed a family friendly environment? That's the gray area where a lot of the societal discourse is happening, and where a lot of people are getting caught up in, is this appropriate or not for my kids to be?
And the liability is on the venue to provide a show that they say they're going to provide, right? And to like make sure things that they say are going to happen in private are staying in private and not going on into public space. I don't think anyone's going to disagree with that.
Yeah, as somebody who's worked at events, and I still work at events, it's part of my income, is that there are situations where you run into things like that, where people will take 20 seconds of a situation, and there's an entire context before it, and there's a context after that it occurs. And it is up to the venues to make sure they set the record straight.
And it's also very important, if you're accusing someone of sexually grooming children, which I feel like that is like the main issue here. People are accusing drag queens and other queer people of sexually grooming children. You have to have better arguments than tipping. Tipping is not inherently sexual. That is
Yes,
a
it
variable that
is.
is not inherently sexual.
It's
Really? You've never
rewarding
tipped a
Is
someone
waitress?
for
busking
something.
CTV?
Yeah,
You know that's not true.
busking, yeah. Like no,
Is
it's not
busking
inherently
sexual?
sexual.
When you all talk and ask questions at the same time, it allows me to be the
So
ability to be able to hear.
basically, yeah.
Is
Nothing.
busking
When you're in a night, when
busking
you're
sexual?
hold on, just
Sure.
instead of doing that, Joe, I think we can just
Sure.
offer a position. Like
Gotcha.
when you're at a venue like a bar and you have somebody who's hired talent, like a musician or some kind of performer, like a comedian or
Storybook
something
reader.
like that, typically the venue itself doesn't handle tips for that person, and it's up to the performer like to either like sell merch or take tips or however they're going to do it. Maybe they have a hat, you know, like if you're a musician on a stage and you got a hat at the foot of the stage, but the bar does not usually like take on the like onus to handle the tips for the performer. And it can also get like dodgy if that were the case, because people could think like the bar was doing something like fishy or something like that if they were taking a percentage. So that's just how that is. It's just tipping for the performance.
Yeah, but the sexualized nature of it, right, and how the money ends up being accepted is where, like, it crosses the line of appropriateness for children.
Well, yeah,
Describe-
so we can agree
describe
if
the
things are
sexual
going
nature.
into if
Right.
things are going into a G string, sure, they're bad. But from what I've seen, I've just seen people like get money put into their hands. So
You have to make the argument that handing someone else a dollar bill is inherently a sexual act.
I don't have to make a damn argument
making the
for
positive
me
queen.
to tell you that I think that it's inappropriate for children to be handing people dressed in drag and they're acting and dancing in a sexualized manner.
Okay.
Okay, but then it's the
It's not.
dancing that's sexual,
No,
not the money.
Where did the children get the money?
But it's not about the money
The
and the
parents.
actual
No,
tip
where did they
that
get it? Alex got it. They got it from the parents.
Wait, stop.
Just
James,
focus on-
you gotta let Turk. Yeah, you ask a question. If you meant I didn't actually mean to ask you a question, then don't actually do it, because when you ask somebody a question, they're gonna try to respond. Then you shout over them the answer. It's just gonna mess with the flow. So I want Turk to be able to respond to that.
So I have kids. I hand them money to go and do things, and sometimes they do really stupid things. Right. The entire point of a tip is to reward someone for an action or a task or a job that they did that you thought was acceptable, and they did a good job. If a kid is handing a tip to a person in drag for their performance, they are being trained, get based. What's the best way to say this? They're being reinforced in an action that's reinforcing another person's action based on the environment that they're in. So if it was drag story hour and it's Mrs. Doubtfire and she's like, okay, thank you for letting me read the what's the one with the tree, the giving tree, and the child hands her or him, what, I don't even know the gender or whatever now, because y'all are confusing. If that kid hands a dollar, it's like, that's, I think, okay. But if someone's coming around to a table and like they lift their shirt and like they stuff it into the bra, that inherently can be sexual because of how the tip is being done, and it's reinforcing.
no,
the
Okay, but you
child's
see how far
behavior.
you had to stretch it.
Yeah,
Like,
no one
first of all, it
disagrees.
was tipping as sexual,
I don't
and
think
now you
he's
kind of
stretching
retreated
things.
to.
I think he's just giving
It's two different
examples of
examples to the issue at
Right.
hand.
So
the issue at
then-
hand was in this specific event, kids were indeed tipping drag queens by handing them dollars, and you described that as potentially sexual. But in order to like provide an example of something that's actually sexual, you had to stretch that to a completely different event. And this is
Well,
what's kind of frustrating
also,
about this.
it can be sexual if they're tipping for a sexual act.
Okay,
So,
but
like,
we haven't. But we are not agreeing that drag is inherently sexual. In fact, we explicitly agree that it's not.
And
You can
that's
tip
why
a
I
drag queen
used the
without it being
drag
inherently
time
sexual.
story
And we
hour
also don't
thing,
have-
and
we didn't even get-
claimed that reading it and giving the tip for that action might not be unacceptable.
Yeah, I think we might
Jingles,
be
I'm being good
misunderstanding
faith here,
Turk,
dude.
because Turk's just
Yeah,
been asking like what we consider family appropriate and stuff like that. You know,
Yeah.
am I right, Turk? Like that seems like what you're trying to ascertain.
and that goes to my premise. It's like, what does society deem as acceptable? Should we be funding these sorts of actions that are going against what society wants? And that's why I'm like, if society thinks that this drag time story hour is acceptable, parents should be able to bring their kids to it.
okay, but what do you think? Do you think it's
difficult
appropriate
for
or not?
Jangles
That doesn't
and
matter
myself.
to this particular discussion.
It
What
does.
matters is
You're
the-
invited here to share your opinion.
Wait. Tap, you gotta let Turk finish. If he starts the sentence, I want to hear the end of it. Turk.
So, I could give you my opinions on things. My opinions don't really direct the aggregate statistical support of 2 or 4 of society. I would rather talk more in terms of the conservative movement, right? As a person of the conservative movement, that sort of action probably is not deemed socially acceptable. I can talk to that, but
Yeah, but I'm
my
asking
opinion on the
you
matter is not really
specifically.
relevant here.
I'm asking you about your opinion because I'm interested in your opinion. So I want you to like make a stance and stand by it. Like, what do you think? Do you think this is inappropriate or not? And where do you draw the line?
I definitely think that that is not appropriate. I would not bring my kids to that sort of an event.
To drag queen story hour?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm trying to not use terms too often because I got kids that are asleep.
Okay, thank you. That's all I wanted to know is that that's your view that drag queen story hour is not appropriate.
Based.
Okay, so just really quickly, the issue that I think me and Jangles have with like agreeing that, or just with some of the way that we're framing things, is that Jangles, correct me if I'm wrong, we're not trying to accept the premise that those things are actually happening, but it's rather like a bunch of misinformation around like what is actually happening in those performances that like gives people these perceptions.
It's the mislabeling of something as inherently sexual, but then it's not able to back it up. That again, I don't like whataboutism, but if you have that exact same scenario in other situations, when straight people do it, it's not deemed sexual, but it seems when you introduce an element of queer identity, then it becomes sexual.
No, I think that, like we pointed out, the examples, you're just refusing to want to see them, right? We point to money being handed, in a strip club nature, right? You
Hold on. Stop. One at a time. One at a time.
Listening, Jangles.
One at a time.
Yeah. He's the only one.
No, one point at a time.
One item on the list at a time.
Now, since I had the mic and I'm speaking, there's been a lot of examples that have already been pointed out. Just because you refuse to acknowledge them doesn't mean that they haven't been given out to you. So either A, you start being a part of the genuine part of this conversation, which is we are telling you that these things are associated with these things over here, right? And you can understand that instead of just saying, no, it's not because of all this over here, blah, 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 right? You are the one that's being inconsistent.
Do you want me to engage with that point directly? You said money being handed in a strip club-like nature. You have to make the argument that handing someone else a dollar bill is inherently sexual. You have not done that. You have failed to do that.
In a strip club environment where they're dancing sexually, that's what makes the tipping sexual.
He said explicitly in a strip club nature. I don't know what the fuck that means.
It means dancing sexually.
CTV.
Yeah, you're rewarding them from it. That it would imply.
I want CTV to answer that. What does strip club nature mean to him in this context? Like, to the best of your ability, please.
When you've got people dressed provocatively, moving sensually in a, I don't know, you got a neon sign in the background that might say something to the effect of, it's not going to lick itself, so right? That might be a good indicator, right? That
I agree. Yeah, I think this would be enough to indicate that the environment is sexual.
A strip club nature. So double entendres, yeah, I agree that's inappropriate. But that's not, that doesn't automatically say, oh, now it is sexual. Now it's a strip club environment. A strip club environment. No, correct me if I'm wrong. Can I get everyone to agree on this? Make a strip club environment.
You don't think that's weird? You don't think that's weird?
He just said it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
I could think
so. Jangles, can we wrap this up? We're like getting on this topic for almost we're going on like an hour and 30 minutes, hour 45, 2 hours on this topic. So I want to make sure we can get past it. So Jangles, I'm gonna have you just like wrap us up, then we're gonna do any statements, okay?
Okay, cool. Fuck. So a strip club nature, like, correct me if I'm wrong, stripping is probably a pretty important core component of strip clubs, right? So in order for this to be of a strip club nature, you would have to be rewarding someone for taking their clothes off in order to arouse you. That's why I think it's disingenuous. And when you accuse me of not following along, no, I was. You just didn't do a good job justifying something. We're looking at variables here, trying to identify what is the thing, and you go back on circular logic. It's sexual because it's drag, and because drag is sexual, and it's sexual because it's drag. It's the entire circular logic of it. Handing someone a dollar bill is not inherently sexual. Drag queens are not inherently strippers. It's not stripper-like. So I don't know. I've been really disappointed in this entire. Like,
Well, that's only because
conversation.
you're so desensitized to sex. Just a simple act of looking up a girl's skirt can sexually arouse somebody that hasn't seen it before. So the idea that young kids that have never seen sex before are super sensitive to it, so they could be sexually aroused with just cleavage, with just a bikini cut underwear. But because you've been desexualized, you feel like they have to strip naked or they have to actually go full throttle.
If I've been
That's not
desexualized,
the
that means you're
same.
sexualizing these kids. You're explicitly doing that right now,
I'm
determining like
saying
what
you're
they will be sexually attracted
desensitized
to.
to sex. So in order for you to be turned on, you need more
You have
hardcore
accused gay people and
sexual
queer people of being
invitation.
groomers, and now you are inherently talking about what kids might be sexually turned on by in this conversation.
I'm saying they are they're more sensitive, less desensitized. So that's why going to a drag show is not good for them to see. I can remember my first sexual experience like it was yesterday. Now I've had a lot of sexual experiences since then that I forgot about. Why is that? Because it's called sexual implantation. Your first memories of sex are a lot stronger than the ones you have on later on in life. So that's why it's important to protect kids from this, because those sexual memories are a lot stronger, similar to sexual abuse or sexual trauma that a kid faces that they can never forget. So that's why it's important to protect kids when they are most sensitive to it and keep them away from it. It's just that simple, bud.
What age do you think people should be exposed to sex then?
Age of consent in that state, I guess. I mean,
In
that's
that
the best
state?
answer I can give you. Like whatever, around 16 or 17, whenever the legal age is, when they should be, they should learn about it, sex ed, and all that stuff in school.
It's funny because in the GOP platform they said 21, so I'm good.
I'm not
Okay.
the GOP platform. You know that, right, Joe?
I'm just saying it's interesting. It's unrelated. It's just interesting.
Okay, we're gonna do wrapping up on this topic. So everybody's gonna have like 30 seconds, 45 seconds max to do an ending statement, and we're gonna start with our lovely last second replacement who helped me out here, Turk.
Third topic or no?
We the thing is we didn't put a third topic there to begin with, so the only third topic I think of obviously would be Roe v. Wade, but nobody did prep for that, so I don't think anybody really wants to do that.
Anybody do
I'm-
prep for this? People
Yeah.
prep for this debate?
Yeah, I was just asking if we were doing closing
Obviously not.
statements and outros is kind of.
Does everybody want to wrap it up here?
I
Please,
think
Yeah.
we
for
had
the
a
love of
nice
fucking Christ.
discussion. I think it's good to just leave it at a good high
Okay,
point.
Roe v. Wade will be next week then. Turk, yep. Any statement and outro.
Yeah, so I'm glad I actually had to have a fruitful conversation. I'm glad that actually I could converse with people that do not agree with me. I'm glad that people were not rudely interrupting me. But that's a story for another day. I didn't know what the topic was coming in. I was just subbing in. But I thanks Dylan and Danabo for hosting and all that good stuff. I'm in a weird spot as a conservative. This is going under what I said last week. It's like, I understand that people have the right to raise their kids the way that they want to raise them. Jangles, I feel your situation, and I don't think you shouldn't have that right to get that experience. However, forcing it upon the entire society or the local community in order to get warm fuzzies from few with the public resources is definitely place for legitimate discussion, and we have to hash that out, and we have to come to a compromise as to what is acceptable, what is not acceptable in the community. And that's, I think, the honest conversation that needs to happen. I appreciate the conversation of like what is inherently sexual about this action. It kind of moved me a little bit, but I'm not entirely convinced. And I would like to see kind of this condemnation of sexual acts of drag across the community. Because when I talk to people like CSP, Communities Crowdsource Politics, he says it's never sexual. And this panel, I think I've heard from several people, thinks that it is. I don't know a percentage or whatever, but I wish y'all would correct y'all's selves when y'all are talking about these types of topics, because I don't want to have to refer them to Dylan's panel, because that's bad advertising.
Toft?
Okay, yeah, I think that the fundamental disagreement in almost every little round of confrontation that we had in this topic was some person on one or the other side not understanding the idea that you can have something that is usually one way, but not always. So drag is in general sexual, but not always. And, gender is something that can be associated with sex, but not always. And so when we talk about these topics, I think it's really important for LGBT people to just accept that, like, there are instances where showing children drag or inviting them to drag shows is inappropriate. And it's okay to bite that bullet and to acknowledge that and to call that behavior out for what it is, which is inappropriate. When you have children dancing sexually, when you have them, exposed to performers who are dancing sexually, these would be examples, I think, of going over the line. I don't think that Drag Queen Story Hour is the most egregious example of this. Because again, I don't think that, like, the fact that something is generally or perhaps associated with sex by some people is a high enough bar. So that's my reasoning. I think that some things are obviously inappropriate. We should just be okay with calling them out and not have to fight tooth and nail to defend every single point or take on ridiculous positions like drag is never sexual, because that's ridiculous. Everyone knows it is. And we can really have a conversation, a nuanced conversation about this if we're willing to.
Okay, now I'm going to throw it over to Rhizome.
Yeah, to me, it seems like we all agree exposing a kid to R or X-rated things could be bad, and we all seem to agree that there's ways of doing drag that don't include R-rated stuff, which would mean that drag itself is not an X-rated or R-rated thing, but just that it can be. We disagreed on how much certain sexual things are happening at drag shows, but we agree if those things were happening at an event that kids are invited to, it could be bad. To me, it seems that the issue is more TPUSA or libs of TikTok giving misinfo around what drag shows look like and what the nature of drag shows are. And if they didn't exist, we'd probably agree a lot more.
Joe Lewis?
I yield my time.
Remember, everybody, this is also wrapping up statements. So if you want to shout yourself out, this is the time to do it.
Oh, follow me at Rhizome, RHYZOHM on Twitch.
Yeah, follow me, Taftaj.
Kirk?
None of your community is going to follow me despite how many panels I go on here. So,
or despite the fact that he actually fucking loaned a laptop to Dylan to be able to make the Ukraine trip happen. All you sons of bitches in Dylan's chat that aren't following the Turk.
That is true. I'm going to throw it over to Jangles.
Black erasure's real.
Yeah. Hey, Tataj and Turk, if either or both of you would like to discuss one-on-one or a three-person like little group, that'd be awesome. I think it'd be fun. Yeah. So I would have much rather. I would have liked the conversation to go a little bit further than it did, or anywhere at all. Yeah. So I was not dissuaded from my original point that that queer in a lot of people's eyes is inherently sexual. That if you make something queer, the exact same action, but if you make it queer, people will find it inherently more sexual. I wasn't convinced of that. And yeah, I think the people who, especially like people like Libs of TikTok, TBUSA, people like Alex, who make disingenuous claims about what goes on at the events, just make the conversation worse by saying that everything is inherently sexual because queer people are there. So yeah, I wasn't dissuaded. And Alex, honey, please understand that gender is not the same as sex. It's not inherently sexual. Please, for the love of God, learn that so we don't have a shit show of a conversation again.
Okay, I'm going to throw it over to Alex Stein because I think it's appropriate.
Wow, Jangles is triggered so much, but I mean, I don't think you can use the word queer without describing who you're attracted to sexually, and you can't do that without defining their gender. So I get it. We just have to agree to disagree. And I just want to thank everybody, especially Joe. I learned that I'm demisexual because, I have friends that I'm attracted to. They're good personalities. I think Taftaj is very fair.
I'm glad you like it.
And her description of, how drag, story time or drag events can sometimes be sexual, and that they're, overtly sexual a lot of the time, maybe not all of the time, maybe not 100% of the time, but a majority of the time. I think Rhizome was fair too. Now James from the internet was not. He doesn't even know Joe Lewis's argument. So that guy's like, I
love you, prime time.
You're as smart as a box of rocks, as they say, but that's fine. I don't understand. I can see that you're doing really well with all those Spider-Man and all that movie memorabilia. I can tell you're living a very fulfilled life. So listen,
come by and chat about it.
James.
I
Go ahead.
wouldn't even waste my time. But what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, we need to protect kids. I think that there's a lot of sexual trauma that kids face, and it is a parental issue. I think their parents are exposing them. And there's a saying, it's like having a trans kid is a lot like having a vegan cat. It's not necessarily the kid making the decision. It's oftentimes the parents, just like a cat doesn't want to be vegan. So that's the world we live in, is that these parents are the ones that are providing, the gender reassignment surgery or the gender hormone therapy. And that's why it's more likely for a kid to reassign their gender or have gender hormone therapy in Los Angeles than it is in Ohio. So it's not just because a kid says, oh, it's, I'm able to be myself in these cities. No, it's because these are parents that are making the decision. So I think we have a huge parental issue, and that that's a problem with society today. Is a lot of parents are using their kids as collateral for clicks and views on TikTok and Instagram, and that was something that wasn't possible in the past. And when we talk about the sexualization of our children, when I was in school, our kids, my teacher didn't have a Facebook, my teacher didn't have an Instagram, so I didn't know about their sexuality. I didn't know that that was a big part of their lifestyle. So I just want to separate sex from children any way possible and protect them, because they are more sensitive to sex than they are when they get older. So with that, I think it was a fun debate. I like CTV, and I really like to say, Dylan, thank you for getting on the front lines and helping out Zelensky. I know you're doing a heck of a job. I know it's a very scary place. I see your videos. You look scared to death when you're hanging out with all those soldiers and shooting guns. I can't imagine, you risking your life for us and that great content, that great YouTube content. So you're a real hero. Thank you, Dylan.
I know the ghost of Kiev is, it turned out that wasn't real, but I'm the shill of Kiev, okay? And I will not back down. I'm going to throw it over to James.
I'd like to thank Alex Stein for finishing by agreeing with my point while simultaneously also calling me a retard. So take from that what you will. Your reminder here that if you're so convinced that drag is bad and bringing kids to drag hour is bad, maybe don't bring your kids to drag hour. Don't try to get the state to craft legislation to protect your child because you're bad at being a parent. Don't turn to the nanny state to do your job for you. And if you have ever complained about drag hour being something that sexualizes or grooms children, and every single one of your social media posts about it also doesn't include banning kids from, I don't know, gymnastics in tight leotards, children's beauty fashion pageants, taking your kids to church where we know what happens to them at church, well then chances are you're a hypocrite. And if you think that anything I've said is somehow too far off base and you want to school me, please feel free to come by anytime. Twitch.tv/James from the internet. Cheers.
Okay, and we're going to wrap up with CTV.
It's been a good panel tonight, chat. It's been a good panel. Some of y'all get the sense of humor. Some of y'all don't. But you know what? Ultimately, at the end of the day, what I'm trying to do is entertain all you fine folks at home. So I want to thank everybody for coming and being a part of this Hippy Dippy Roundtable featuring the Hippy Dippy Champion. And you can find me over at twitch.tv/critically thinking veteran. And if you feel so inclined to, have a rational discussion or to have a meme discussion, whatever your pleasure is, come join the Infinity Acre Wood. We got a lot of folks that are part of the community, and we love having good conversations.
Happy to have you all here. Thank you all for taking your Friday to come on to my show. See you all later. Alex Stein, if you want, I'll bring you to the front lines of Ukraine. You can look at it all with me, okay? I'll give you a place.
I will. Hey, but you never showed me the American flag in Ukraine. Please send me that when you get a chance.
I'll send it to you. Absolutely. Actually, I can show you it on the patches of Ukrainian soldiers.
I've got
I'm talking
honest,
about from the citizens, but yeah. But
well, what do you call? What do you call a soldier? They're still citizens. They
honestly, you can show me the Nazi patches too, and then gay marriage isn't legal in Ukraine. You understand that, right?
Yeah, gay marriage wasn't legal in Poland. Would have supported them against the Nazi invasion.
So Dylan, honest payment for the laptop.
You support a place that doesn't believe in your right to get married. That's real smart, Dylan. But that's fine.
Of course I would. Of course. Wait. Let me ask you a question. Do you think if China invaded America in 2014, I would have been like, well, they don't have gay marriage, so I guess all the people in California just get to blow the fuck up and die. You can't help a queer person if they're dead, right? If they get blown up.
My point being is that Ukraine does not show the same gratitude. We're giving them $80 billion, and every single place I turn, I see a Ukrainian flag. That's not the same. There's not an American flag every single corner of the Ukraine. And all the people during the Gay Pride Parade that have the Ukrainian flag waving, it's a big symbol of the Gay Pride Parade video I saw. I haven't seen one instance of gay marriage being legal in the Ukraine. So it seems awfully hypocritical in my opinion.
How can you have? Well, you would need to legalize gay marriage to have any instances. You would, but I guess for me, like
it doesn't exist.
Wait. America is one of the most favorably viewed nations by Ukrainians. All the polling data, I think it's like 80% of Ukrainians view America favorably. In fact, I believe it's 75% of Ukrainians who view Joe Biden favorably.
They should. They should. We're giving them $80 billion.
So
Could you imagine if they did like this?
So I would say that the polling data reflects them being grateful, and I have seen American flags around. In fact, I've seen people selling American flags in stalls in the corners of Lviv and other areas.
Post some pictures of it, please.
Okay, I'm happy to. Yeah.
Do you think Ukraine will ever get gay marriage if they win the war?
Absolutely.
Oh, you do. You think
Really?
Zelensky, even though they got rid of
But wait, let me tell you. Let me tell you something. In 2016, the polling for gay marriage in Ukraine was like around 30%. This year, the last polling data that's come out, it was about 57% of Ukrainians in favor of gay marriage. Now, there was an asterisk there, and that is it. With the exception of like adoption rights, that's a separate issue. But when you think of Ukraine being between Poland and Russia, two of the most well-known like homophobic countries in all of Europe and Asia, like that's pretty fucking good, and that's a lot of progress. 20% bumps is pretty big in my opinion.
It's still illegal, so you're just you're defending a place where you couldn't even live your lifestyle there legally. So
I've met Ukrainians who are gay who are actually
What do you mean I can't?
What do you mean I can't live my lifestyle?
Can you get married? You're a gay man, right, Dylan?
I'm queer. I'm like bisexual, homo.
I'm just saying, could you marry a man in the Ukraine right now?
No, I can't.
Exactly.
So let me ask you, wait, Alex, if Russia invaded America in 2014, do you think I should have been like, fuck this shit, I don't give a fuck?
Why would I want Russia to? Why would I?
No, listen to me. In 2014, there was no gay marriage in America. Do you think I should have been like, I don't care if the Russians slaughter civilians in California or in Arizona because I can't get married here? If we're all dead, then it's kind of impossible for gays to get married.
I don't think that's a fair comparison. I'm just saying you're in the Ukraine.
Why not?
Defending a country because we have
the
context of where you're at. You're trying to talk about a hypothetical. Right now, you are
gonna dip
defending
out,
a
guys.
country.
I love
You're
you
in the
guys. I
front-
will see
I'm
you
saying
guys. I love you. Bye,
you're in the
everybody.
front
Bye,
line.
bye, bye, bye.
Bye.
In the
Yeah,
front
I think the
lines
rest of
a
us are gonna
country.
head out, or at least
You're
I am.
risking your life, Dylan. You're
Yeah.
risking your life for a country that's not showing you the same gratitude. That would not even let you marry your boyfriend. So I just think that's awful.
What would you say?
I mean, you can say that's
Okay,
not.
wait,
You can say
wait.
that's not hypocritical. You can give me hypothetical.
Okay.
But I don't think that's fair.
How about not a hypothetical? 1944, D-Day. Black soldiers were arms in arms with other soldiers as they charged the beaches, even though Black Americans didn't have the right to vote. Many of them got. Wait. Let me finish. Many of them got tattoos. VV, victory against fascism in Europe, victory against fascism and racism at home. And they went on, many of them, to actually, become civil rights leaders and lead the struggle for Black people getting the right to vote. And there are Ukrainians, gay Ukrainians in the military who wear unicorn patches specifically to tell people this patch means I'm queer, I'm gay, and I'm fighting these fucking Russian orcs. And you want to know?
Okay. Fun guys. I don't want to be in that conversation anymore. This was rough for sure. I need to figure out stream stuff. I don't know. I need to figure out stream stuff. I'll probably stream tomorrow and have a conversation with Hans of Harkir. But I mean, I don't know, because I think that ultimately I would want to get into a position where I'm mixing politics with maybe more like Amaranth style content. So yeah, we'll see. You think I could have been more aggressive? Maybe. Yeah, I think that like the problem, if you're too aggressive when you're do debates in a bathtub pool, I think so. I think that if you're perceived as a woman and you're too aggressive, that can be like not so good. One thing that I notice is a lot of times I'll make an argument and then someone else will make the same argument and then they'll get like credit for making the argument, which is sort of frustrating. And I wonder if that's a gendered thing. I don't know. Or if they're just like they were zoned out when they were listening to me and then they tuned back in when the other person repeated what I said. Um or if they're just like complimenting the last person they heard speak about it. But like I think that a lot of times sometimes it has to do with delivery, and male delivery is almost always more overpoweringly confident. Maybe. Not too aggressive, balance, my friend. Your issue is that for that type of conversation, you need the right strong framing to set the whole thing off. Well, they think I was really strong in different places. And I think that in general, when that happens, it's only noticeable to me when I feel I've stated something in a much stronger way. So there's like a few moments where I think I state something more concisely and in stronger terms, more poetic terms, and yet it doesn't really come across. That only happens sometimes. Other times I state something and people are like, oh shit, that was really good. I think I like 10 to 20% more aggressive, just a few insults. Yeah, I did that a little bit with Rob where I was like, it's not funny, it wasn't funny the first time, etc. No, you did fine. But the moments when you were muted, pointing out to the chat the derailing thing, you are allowing. Fuck. Pointing out to the chat the derailing thing, you are allowing someone else to frame. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. On the other hand, I do think that like I guess I definitely worry about being too aggressive because a lot of times I am like stepping in, butting in, trying to get words in, and I get like a lot more words in. I think maybe than like a lot of people, like a lot more than like James at least, probably more than Joe Lewis. Sometimes yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like the conversations sort of revolve around me because you'll have like other conservatives, but it's very hard to find conservatives on Twitch. And so you end up getting people who are like crazy or they're memers, and lefty people sometimes they want to engage with them just to, like dunk on them, but other times if they want to have an actual conversation they'll just like only engage with me. So but maybe on panels I should just be like very aggressive. I could do that. I could be more aggressive. I feel like a dick because I'm like I can't interrupt with people. Sometimes I do that. But then like Dylan was like calling me out. Dylan was like, "Don't interrupt. Like don't do that." So I think that from Dylan's perspective, I was being too aggressive at some points. Yeah, I'm definitely more of a logos type of person. Whew, rough though. All right. I am going to stop streaming. I'm going to say goodnight for tonight. Night, everybody.